there is a question that sits at the edge of everything we know, quiet but unyielding. Why is there something instead of nothing? It's the simplest question, and also the most impossible. Every atom in your body, every flicker of starlight, every whisper of thought depends on the fact that something, anything, exists at all. Yet if you trace everything back far enough, through dust and galaxies and time itself, you eventually face a void that has no reason to have given birth to anything. The universe seems to be here without permission. The ancient philosophers spoke of this paradox with reverence. The Rig Veda asked, "Whence this creation has arisen? Perhaps it formed itself, or perhaps it did not." In those lines, there's an echo of modern physics, though it would take thousands of years for us to name the same mystery with equations instead of hymns. When cosmologists speak of the Big Bang, they do not mean an explosion in space, but the creation of space itself, a swelling of nothing into everything, the very fabric of space-time, along with energy, matter, and even causality, all unfurled from a point of no size, no place, no time, and still, no one knows why. We imagine the beginning as a flash, a roar, a burst of light, but the truth may be quieter. The quantum vacuum, what physicists once thought of as pure emptiness, is not truly empty. It's a restless sea, humming with invisible energy, a field where particles appear and vanish like fleeting breaths. Even when you strip away everything, atoms, photons, gravity, what remains is not void but potential, the possibility of becoming. The energy of the vacuum is never zero. It's the faint vibration of existence itself, an eternal hum that refuses to be silenced. In this strange picture, nothing is no longer absolute. It's a kind of fullness too subtle for eyes to see. And perhaps that's what creation really was, not an act of divine will or cosmic accident, but a fluctuation, one moment when the quantum sea trembled hard enough to ripple into permanence. Imagine it, in the endless stillness, a flicker of imbalance, a breath that could not be undone. Out of that, time began to move. Modern physics tries to describe this in the language of energy fields and equations, yet the heart of it remains poetic. The universe might have arisen spontaneously, without cause, as the laws of physics permitted existence to blossom from the instability of the void. But what does it mean for the laws themselves to exist, if there was once nothing to hold them? Did the laws emerge with the universe, or were they always waiting, sleeping in the dark, waiting to awaken? Every scientific explanation seems to stumble into a deeper question. The Big Bang tells us how the universe expanded, but not what made it expand. Quantum theory tells us fluctuations can create particles, but not why there was a quantum field in the first place. Even the idea of before loses its meaning, because time itself began when space did. There is no before the beginning, only a silence that can't be measured and maybe never ended. When you close your eyes and imagine nothing, your mind still fills it with something. Blackness, stillness, emptiness. But true nothingness has no colour, no dimension, no observer to witness it. It cannot even be called a state, because that word implies something that exists. Physicists once tried to model the vacuum as such a state, a true zero, but discovered that even when all matter and radiation are removed, quantum fields still shimmer with uncertainty. Like the faint vibration of a plucked string, the void hums with possibilities. Some theorists call this the zero-point energy, the lowest possible state of being, and yet it's not zero. It is a restlessness built into the fabric of reality, as if the universe itself cannot tolerate stillness. Perhaps the cosmos didn't need a creator, only this intrinsic trembling. In one moment, if moment even means anything then, that trembling inflated beyond control, birthing time, space, and the architecture of everything we know. And what if the universe didn't come from something else, but from an imbalance within nothing itself? Physicist Lawrence Krauss once said that nothing is unstable. That might sound paradoxical, but maybe that's the point. If nothingness is unstable, then existence was inevitable. The universe, in that sense, could be a natural consequence of nothing not being able to stay nothing, a cosmic inevitability, like a raindrop forming when vapour can no longer hold itself apart. In many ancient traditions, this idea was expressed differently, but felt the same. In the Tao Te Ching, Laozi wrote, "The Tao produced one, one produced two, two produced three, and three produced the 10,000 things. The Tao, emptiness, void, potential, gives rise to everything not through force, but through yielding. The physicists might speak of vacuum fluctuations, the mystics of divine breath. But perhaps they are all pointing to the same secret, that reality is the dream of nothing remembering itself, and yet, for all our equations and metaphors, we cannot escape the feeling that something is missing. Science can describe what happened 1/1,000,000,000th of a second after the beginning, but not the spark that allowed it. The word why doesn't belong in our equations, but it lingers in our minds nonetheless. Maybe we are not meant to solve it, only to sit quietly at its edge and listen. Because if nothing truly existed, no laws, no time, no energy, then even the idea of a universe should have been impossible. And yet, here it is. The atoms in your bones were forged in the hearts of dying stars that only existed because the vacuum decided to ripple. The breath you take now is part of the same expanding space that burst forth 13.8 billion years ago. You are, in some strange and literal way, the continuation of that first impossibility. So perhaps the real question is not, why is there something instead of nothing? But why does nothing need to become something at all? Maybe existence is not an accident or a miracle, but a rhythm, the pulse of the void, forever alternating between silence and song. And as you listen to the quiet around you now, somewhere deep beneath that quiet, the same hum continues. The breath of the vacuum, the faint vibration that never ceased. Because maybe, even in the deepest stillness, the universe was already awake. If the first paradox is that nothing somehow became something, the next mystery is that this something has never truly stopped being nothing. The more deeply scientists look into the foundations of existence, the more fragile matter appears. Every solid thing, the table, the mountain, the hand you place upon your chest, is mostly emptiness. Within an atom, if the nucleus were the size of a marble, the nearest electron would orbit several kilometers away. Everything between them is void, a vastness humming with invisible potential. Yet from that void arises all form, all weight, all beauty. Physicists call this hum the quantum vacuum. It's not a static emptiness, but a restless sea where fields fluctuate in and out of balance. Tiny bursts of energy flicker into being, birthing particles and their opposites, pairs of existence and anti-existence, only to annihilate each other almost instantly. This ghostly dance happens everywhere, all the time, in every cubic centimetre of space. The vacuum, then, is less a void and more a stage, a quantum field trembling at the edge of realization. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle whispers that certain pairs of properties, like position and momentum, can never be known exactly at once. This same uncertainty applies to the very energy of empty space. The universe, it seems, cannot rest perfectly still. That restlessness might be the reason it began at all. A tiny fluctuation in that primeval nothing, magnified by chance or inevitability, might have inflated into the cosmos we now inhabit. Imagine a pond in absolute calm. For eternity, it mirrors nothing. Then, without cause, a single ripple appears, not because something fell into it, but because perfect stillness could not hold, The ripple spreads, growing wider, transforming stillness into motion. That is one way to picture the beginning. Not an explosion, but a ripple through the quantum pond of non-being. The physicist Edward Tryon once proposed, half in jest, that the universe is simply a quantum fluctuation that grew large. His idea was audacious but strangely satisfying. The total energy of the universe, if you count the positive energy of matter and the negative energy of gravity, might actually add up to zero. In other words, everything could sum to nothing, perfectly balanced. The universe may not violate any rule, because in a deep accounting, it still equals nothing, creation, then may have cost nothing at all. And yet, the question lingers, where did the laws that permit such fluctuations come from? Did they exist before space and time, like invisible blueprints? Or did they arise with the first quiver of being, self-generating in an act of cosmic recursion? Some scientists, like Stephen Hawking, suggested that asking what came before the universe is like asking what's north of the North Pole, meaningless, because time itself began with creation. But even that idea feels like a poetic escape. If time began, there must have been a timelessness before it. If laws emerged, there must have been a stillness waiting to receive them. Perhaps what we call fluctuation is just our language for something deeper, the boundary where potential becomes experience. In quantum mechanics, particles do not have definite properties until observed. They exist as probabilities, as maybes, as clouds of possibility. When an observation occurs, the wave function collapses into a single outcome. Some thinkers have wondered whether the birth of the universe itself was the ultimate wave collapse, the first observation, though no observer yet existed. Or perhaps consciousness was already latent in that act, the seed of awareness present in the trembling void. If that sounds mystical, it may not be far from truth. The quantum world resists the neat categories of cause and effect. There are events without causes, correlations without contact. Virtual particles appear out of nothing and disappear back into it, yet their fleeting existence can be measured through the subtle forces they exert. They leave fingerprints in the emptiness, whispers of an invisible conversation between being and non-being. These quantum whispers even shape the fate of the cosmos. The Casimir effect, a tiny but measurable pressure, arises because virtual particles behave differently in narrow gaps than in open space. From such infinitesimal fluctuations emerges the physics that governs stars and galaxies. The vastness above is woven from the jittering restlessness beneath. The silence between galaxies is not the silence of nothingness, but of invisible motion, an ocean of trembling potential stretching without end. And if this quantum sea is infinite, then creation is not a single event in the past, but an ongoing process. Every second, every moment, reality renews itself from fluctuations too small to see. The birth of the cosmos might simply have been one fluctuation that never faded, a cosmic wave that outran its own return. Inflation theory describes how a tiny patch of this trembling vacuum, powered by a field of negative pressure, could expand exponentially, doubling upon itself countless times in the smallest fraction of a second. In that impossible acceleration, the quantum became the cosmic. Nothing transformed into a space large enough to hold everything. Some call this inflation the breath of the universe, the exhalation of the void. Yet we still do not know what inflated or why it stopped. Every equation leads to another veil. The deeper physics peers, the less real solidity seems to be. Matter dissolves into fields, fields into fluctuations, fluctuations into the uncertainty of pure potential. At some point, the line between being and non-being fades, and one wonders if that line ever existed. In the moments before the Big Bang, or within it, depending on how you look, energy density was so immense that the boundaries between space and time themselves blurred. The universe was a quantum object, governed by probabilities, capable of existing in many forms at once. Out of all possible configurations, it chose this one, the version that would evolve stars and planets, and eventually, minds able to ponder their own origins. Was that selection random, or is randomness another word for something we don't yet understand? Perhaps the question isn't, why did the universe appear, but why does it keep appearing? Every atom, every breath, is a continuation of that first quantum pulse. The vacuum never stopped fluctuating. It only learned to dream in patterns. We too are part of those fluctuations, coherent vibrations of the same field that once flickered in silence. So when you look at the night sky and feel small, remember that everything shining above you began as a ripple in nothing. The stars are not separate from that void. They are its expression, its luminous echo, and the darkness between them is not empty at all. It is the same pregnant stillness that once gave birth to light, waiting, perhaps, to do so again. Because maybe the question of origin has no final answer. Maybe the universe did not start, but is always starting, forever trembling at the edge of existence, forever rippling outward from the quiet heart of nothing. The first light was not light as we know it. It wasn't the kind that warms your skin or spills from stars. It was the birth of space-time itself, expanding from an infinitesimal point into a vastness that had no edges and no centre, a whisper that became a roar too fast for sound. Scientists call it cosmic inflation, an instant of unimaginable acceleration when the universe, smaller than an atom, swelled to astronomical size in less than a heartbeat. That expansion didn't move through space, it made space. In that single act, the fabric of reality began to stretch, thin and cool. Before inflation, if before has any meaning, the universe was an opaque, seething plasma so dense that light itself couldn't escape. But in the blink of a cosmic eye, something extraordinary happened. A field. Perhaps the inflatandus filled the void with potential energy that repelled itself. The universe didn't explode outward. It exhaled. The very geometry of space-time began to balloon, smoother and flatter than anyone could have predicted. The quantum fluctuations that had flickered aimlessly in the void were suddenly magnified, frozen into ripples that would one day become galaxies, stars, and everything else we call existence. It's hard to imagine what such a moment means. How can something grow when there is no outside to grow into? Yet that is the quiet miracle of inflation. It does not need an external space. It creates the space it expands through. Every inch of your body, every molecule of air, every star in every cluster was once part of that same expanding field, stretched thin like a breath turning into eternity. Alan Guth, the physicist who first proposed this idea, called it the ultimate free lunch. From an almost nothing, an infinitesimal patch of high-energy vacuum, the entire observable universe may have arisen. If the total energy of the cosmos is indeed zero, balanced perfectly between the positive energy of matter and the negative pull of gravity, then creation could have cost nothing at all. Yet from that perfect balance came imperfection, tiny irregularities in the inflationary field that seeded the structure of everything we now see. Without those irregularities, there would be no galaxies, no stars, no life. The universe required a hint of asymmetry, a touch of chaos, to give birth to order, and perhaps that too is a kind of wisdom hidden in its beginning, that even in physics, perfection leads nowhere. The uniform void needed to tremble, to break symmetry, to fracture just enough to become alive. When the field decayed, its stored energy converted into particles, radiation and heat, an outpouring of light, the first true illumination. This era, called reheating, turned potential into reality. The vacuum's silent pressure became the fiery birth of matter. The echo of that transformation still surrounds us today as the cosmic microwave background, the faint afterglow of creation that fills the universe like a soft, ancient sigh. That light carries a map, a fossil record of the infant cosmos. When we look at it through sensitive instruments, we see tiny variations, temperature differences of mere millionths of a degree, scattered across the sky. Those faint mottlings are not random noise. They are the imprints of quantum fluctuations stretched across cosmic scales. The randomness of the quantum realm, magnified by inflation, became the architecture of the universe. What was once smaller than a proton became the pattern of galaxies spanning billions of light years. There's something humbling in that thought, that every star ever born, every thought ever conceived, began as a flicker of uncertainty. The chaos of the quantum sea became the music of the cosmos. Out of that microscopic trembling, structure emerged, as if the universe carried within it an instinct for harmony. Yet, for all its elegance, inflation theory is still incomplete. No one knows what triggered it, or what ended it. The inflaton field remains hypothetical, its nature elusive. Some models suggest inflation may not have been a one-time event but an eternal process, with different regions of the quantum vacuum inflating into separate universes, an infinite foam of realities, each with its own physical constants and laws. In that picture, our universe is just one bubble in an endless ocean, expanding into nothing while others form and fade beside it. If that's true, then perhaps creation is not a singular miracle but a constant rhythm, a breathing of the void, inhaling and exhaling universes without end. One could even imagine that consciousness, too, follows such a rhythm, the arising and dissolving of awareness within the field of being. Just as space expands and cools, perhaps mind, too, stretches and collapses, creating new realities within itself. In the ancient Vedic hymns, creation is described not as an act but as a breath. From non-being came being, from darkness came light. The gods, it says, were born after this act, not before. The hymns never claim to know how or why. He who looks down on it in the highest heaven, perhaps he knows, or perhaps he does not. Thousands of years later, cosmology echoes the same humility. We can describe what happened a trillionth of a second after the beginning, but not what made it possible. Even the most sophisticated equations end at the same precipice of unknowing where myth once stood. There's something beautiful in that convergence, science and myth gazing at the same horizon from opposite sides of wonder. One uses numbers, the other poetry, yet both describe a moment when everything came from nothing, and even that distinction dissolves. Perhaps the universe itself is the act of wonder made manifest, a moment when potential became curiosity, and curiosity became form, when the void turned inward and asked, "What am I?" And in that question, existence began. Inflation may have been the physical unfolding of that question, the expansion of an inquiry so vast it had to become a cosmos to answer itself, and maybe the faint radiation that still hums through every corner of the universe is not just leftover light, but memory, the memory of that first question, still echoing through time, still expanding, still asking. Every new star that forms, every consciousness that awakens, might be a continuation of that same expansion, the universe thinking, reaching, wandering through us. If that's true, then creation isn't over. It's happening right now, in this breath, in this thought, in the quiet turning of galaxies. The expansion never ended. It merely changed form. The universe is still inflating, but inward now, into awareness, into reflection. The great outward roar has become the soft inward whisper that asks, "How did it all begin?" And perhaps, somewhere in the silence between those questions, lies the answer, not in words or equations, but in the rhythm itself, the same rhythm that began when the first ripple moved through nothing and became everything, when the universe finally began to slow its furious expansion. Something subtle and profound occurred. Symmetry broke. In the earliest instant, everything had been balanced beyond comprehension, Equal parts matter and antimatter, light and darkness, curvature and countercurvature. Every particle had its mirror opposite, identical in every way except charge. In perfect symmetry, the universe would have cancelled itself out, leaving behind only radiation and silence. Yet, somehow, it didn't. For every billion pairs of matter and antimatter that annihilated each other, one extra particle of matter remained. That 1 in a billion imbalance is the reason you can exist at all. Physicists call this event baryogenesis, and no one truly knows why it happened. The equations of physics are mostly indifferent to direction and polarity. They work the same if time runs backward, but reality doesn't. Somewhere in those first fractions of a second, the symmetry of being tilted ever so slightly. That tilt gave birth to everything. Stars, planets, breath, thought. A universe that should have been pure energy instead became a tapestry of atoms and emptiness. Perhaps imperfection is the first form of creation, in Taoist thought, before the world divided into yin and yang. There was the undivided Tao, pure potential, but also stillness. Creation began not when balance existed, but when balance cracked. That fracture is not a flaw, but the movement that makes all else possible. So too in physics, the breaking of symmetry unleashed the diversity of forces and particles that now govern the cosmos. The same universe that once obeyed one unified law splintered into 4: gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear forces. Diversity emerged from collapse. Imagine the early universe as a sphere of blinding energy, perfectly even. Then, as it cooled, subtle instabilities formed, like frost patterns branching across glass. The Higgs field, which endows particles with mass, froze into a specific configuration. Particles that once moved at light speed began to feel resistance, as though space itself had thickened. In that slowing down, structure became possible. The vacuum was no longer uniform, it had valleys and peaks. The universe, once pure symmetry, had chosen a side. Physicist Andrei Sakharov suggested that 3 ingredients are required for this cosmic asymmetry: violation of charge and parity symmetry, CP violation, departure from thermal equilibrium, and interactions that distinguish between matter and antimatter. But beneath the technicalities lies a quieter mystery. Why should the universe prefer one side at all? Why this slight bias toward matter, when antimatter could have ruled just as easily? No one knows. Some imagine hidden regions of the cosmos where the opposite imbalance prevailed, places where antimatter galaxies glow unseen, forever separated from ours by gulfs of annihilating energy. Others propose that the asymmetry was inevitable, a natural outcome of quantum fluctuations writ large. But there's also a more haunting possibility. Perhaps the bias is not a mechanical accident, but an emergent property of existence itself, a tendency toward becoming, toward persistence, as if the universe wanted to see itself unfold. In every myth of creation, there's a fall from unity into duality. The Greeks spoke of chaos dividing into Gaia and Uranus. In the Gnostic Gospels, the one becomes the many through an act of forgetting. In the Vedic hymns, the primordial self splits in 2, for there was no joy in being alone. These stories, born millennia apart, echo the same pattern found in physics, from symmetry to separation, from perfection to creation. The universe seems to require a fracture to know itself. Perhaps that is the hidden cost of existence, that unity must break to experience itself as form. In symmetry, nothing can be distinguished. There is no contrast, no pattern, no meaning. But once broken, the universe can evolve. Matter condenses, gravity gathers, stars ignite. Awareness begins to flicker in the cooling dust. Every act of perception is another fracture, dividing observer from observed, even as they remain one at the root. When we study the cosmic microwave background, we still see the fingerprints of that first asymmetry, the faint fluctuations in temperature that guided galaxies into being. The pattern is almost perfect, but not quite. That not quite is everything. It's the reason there are stars instead of static, life instead of lightless equilibrium. The universe does not seek balance, it seeks motion. Balance is sterile. A small deviation gives birth to time, to direction, to the story itself. In mathematics, symmetry is beauty, but in nature, beauty often hides in brokenness. A snowflake is born when water molecules lose perfect symmetry. The spiral of a shell, the tilt of a planet, the irregular heartbeat of a newborn star, all are consequences of imbalance. Even consciousness might depend on asymmetry, the left and right hemispheres of the brain dancing out of sync just enough to create thought. Perfection, it seems, is the silence before the song. Physicists sometimes describe symmetry breaking as spontaneous. The laws allow many possibilities, but one becomes real. It's like a perfectly balanced pencil standing on its tip. Any tiny disturbance will send it falling in some direction. The direction doesn't matter to the equations. It matters only to the world that follows. In that fall lies destiny. The universe may be nothing more than the echo of a pencil's fall into time. But what caused the first disturbance? If the laws of physics are perfectly symmetric, then the breaking of that symmetry might be their first creative act, the moment potential became choice. And perhaps every moment since then is a continuation of that act, a constant renewing of imperfection. Every breath you take is another asymmetry, the inhale and the exhale never quite equal, the rhythm of imbalance that keeps life moving. When you hold your hand against your heart, you can feel that rhythm, the same imbalance that stirred the first atoms. It's easy to forget that every cell in your body depends on an ancient deviation, a cosmic preference that no one can explain. The stars themselves, those perfect spheres of fire, exist only because the universe once leaned ever so slightly away from perfection. Maybe that's why beauty often feels melancholic, as if it remembers the symmetry it lost. Maybe that's why we seek harmony, not to return to balance, but to understand the fracture that made us. So, the question remains, what is symmetry, truly, if it must break to reveal itself? And what is nothingness, if even its perfect stillness could not hold? Perhaps the void was never destroyed by creation. It simply bent, favouring one side of itself, choosing to move rather than to rest. And maybe that choice, tiny, silent, irreversible, is still echoing through everything that exists. You can hear it, faintly, if you listen between heartbeats. The whisper of the universe leaning forever into being. Out beyond the bright webs of galaxies lies a silence so complete, it almost feels like the pause between thoughts. Astronomers call these regions cosmic voids, vast expanses where, for hundreds of millions of light years, there are no stars, no dust, barely even a whisper of hydrogen. Yet these are not gaps between things, they are part of the structure itself. The universe is not a solid sheet of light, but a lacework, threads of galaxies woven around dark hollows like foam on the surface of an invisible sea. The emptiness between stars is not an absence, it is the dominant feature of existence. Most of the universe is silence. When you look into a night sky, you see only a thin scattering of light. The stars, bright as they seem, are rare. For every glowing sun, there are trillions of miles of nothingness surrounding it. And even in those luminous islands, galaxies bound by gravity, darkness still outweighs light. Something unseen, something that does not shine or reflect, holds those stars in their delicate spiral arms. Without it, galaxies would fly apart, scattered like dust in the wind. We call it dark matter. We do not know what it is, only what it does. It does not absorb light, emit radiation, or interact through electromagnetism. It moves invisibly. its presence betrayed only by its gravity. It bends starlight as it passes, as though unseen hands were distorting the glass of the universe. Scientists estimate that dark matter makes up about 85% of all matter that exists. Everything we see, the stars, planets, nebulae, even ourselves, is only a small residue of what truly fills the cosmos. And beyond even that, there is something stranger still: dark energy, a force not of attraction, but of expansion. It drives galaxies apart, accelerating the growth of the universe, pushing space itself to stretch faster over time. It's as if the very fabric of reality contains a hidden pressure, a deep exhale that never ends. When astronomers discovered this acceleration in 1998, it defied every expectation. Gravity should have been slowing the universe's expansion, but instead it was speeding up. The deeper we look into the void, the more it seems that emptiness has its own momentum. If dark matter is the unseen scaffolding of the cosmos, dark energy is its invisible breath. Together, they make up nearly 95% of everything that exists, and yet we cannot see, touch, or measure them directly. The stars and galaxies, the bright, comforting parts, are merely ripples on the surface of this invisible ocean. The universe is, quite literally, made of darkness. But maybe dark is not the right word. It suggests shadow, or evil, or absence. Yet in truth, this darkness might be the most fertile thing of all. It's the same stillness from which the first fluctuation rose, the same quiet that holds galaxies in their delicate dance. In some ways, it resembles the spiritual idea of the void, what the Taoists called wu, or the Buddhists shunyata, emptiness not as nothing, but as potential. The darkness between stars may not be the opposite of creation, but its womb. And perhaps that's why the universe feels so silent. We search the skies for voices, for signs of life, for proof that we are not alone. Yet the deeper our telescopes peer, the lonelier it becomes. The Fermi paradox asks, if the cosmos is so vast and old, where is everyone? The equations say that intelligent life should have arisen countless times. The silence says otherwise. We send out radio waves, launch probes, scan the heavens for signals, and hear nothing but static and the soft hiss of cosmic background radiation, the whisper of creation itself, still cooling after billions of years. Some believe we're simply early, that civilizations rise and fall before their signals can cross the gulfs of time. Others suspect that advanced beings may exist, but remain silent by choice, watching, or perhaps avoiding us. Yet there's another possibility, quieter and more haunting. Maybe the silence is not emptiness, but equilibrium. Maybe the universe isn't quiet because it's dead, but because it is complete. What if silence itself is the language of the cosmos, not absence, but balance, the hum of existence at rest? Every atom vibrates, every photon moves, every field fluctuates. Even the void between galaxies trembles faintly with virtual particles coming and going. But at the grandest scale, those vibrations cancel out, leaving the vast stillness we perceive as silence. What we call emptiness may simply be the harmony of infinite motion. In the 1930s, the astronomer Fritz Zwicky noticed that galaxies and clusters were moving too fast to be held together by the gravity of visible matter alone. He called the missing mass Dunkel Materie, dark matter, decades later. Vera Rubin confirmed his suspicion, watching the edges of spiral galaxies whirl faster than their visible stars could justify. Something unseen was binding them, as though the universe itself refused to let them scatter. It's strange to think that what we cannot see is what gives form to what we can. Perhaps that is true of more than galaxies. Perhaps it's also true of consciousness, of meaning, of everything that gives weight to life. The unseen might be what makes the visible coherent. When we contemplate dark matter and dark energy, we are really confronting the same question as the mystics. What sustains existence? What keeps the stars alight when their own gravity would tear them apart? What holds the universe in its silent equilibrium? There's a paradox here, one both scientific and spiritual. The more we discover, the more we realize that what's real is invisible. Light is rare, matter is minor, and the universe we know is but a trace of a greater unseen whole. It's almost as if the cosmos hides itself behind its own radiance, revealing only enough to inspire curiosity but never enough to satisfy it. So we gaze into the silence, and the silence gazes back. And maybe that's the point. The void is not withholding an answer, it is the answer. It is the reminder that existence and emptiness are not opposites but reflections. Like the dark and light halves of a single wave, every night, when the stars shimmer above the horizon, remember that their light travels through aeons of darkness to reach you. Without the void, there could be no starlight, no contrast, no meaning. The silence between them is not a void to be filled, but a presence to be understood. Perhaps, in the end, the universe is not lonely, it is listening. The more we learn about the universe, the more it resembles a fabric, flexible, continuous, and alive with unseen tension. Einstein taught us that space and time are not separate entities, but threads of one woven cloth, space-time. Mass and energy warp this cloth, bending the paths of light and altering the flow of time itself. In this picture, gravity is not a force that pulls, but a curve that guides. Planets orbit stars not because they are tugged by invisible strings, but because they follow the natural folds of space-time's geometry. The universe, then, is not a stage upon which things happen, it is the thing that happens. And yet, even Einstein's grand tapestry phrase when we look too closely, at the smallest scales, where quantum uncertainty rules, space-time is no longer smooth, it foams and flickers like the surface of a stormy sea. Distances lose meaning, causality wavers. This is the realm of what physicist John Wheeler called quantum foam, a restless substructure where tiny wormholes open and close in less than a trillionth of a second. Space itself, it seems, is made not of emptiness but of fluctuations. Even geometry is uncertain. Here, at the intersection of the infinite and the infinitesimal, the laws of relativity and quantum mechanics clash. One describes the cosmos as continuous, the other as discrete. Gravity curves smoothly in Einstein's equations, but in the quantum world, everything comes in quanta, packets, probabilities, jumps. Physicists have spent decades trying to reconcile these views, seeking a single theory that can describe both galaxies and atoms, both black holes and electrons. But the deeper they dig, the stranger the answers become. Some propose that space-time itself is not fundamental, that it emerges from something more primitive, something informational. Wheeler once suggested that it from bit, that every particle, every field, every fold of space-time arises from binary choices, from the raw yes or no of quantum measurement. In that view, the universe is not built from matter or energy, but from information, pure distinction, pure difference. Reality is not made of stuff, it is made of relationships. If that's true, then perhaps existence is not physical at its root, but logical, even linguistic. The idea echoes across ancient traditions, the logos of the Stoics, the Om of the Vedas, the divine word that brings form to the formless. In the beginning was the Word, says the Gospel of John, not speech, but structure, the act of differentiation that allows one thing to stand apart from another. In modern terms, that word might be the collapse of a wave function, the transition from potential to actual, from undecided to decided. It's a humbling thought, that the physical universe might be a shadow cast by information. Every photon that moves, every atom that vibrates, carries bits of encoded distinction. The cosmos computes itself, endlessly updating, every interaction a calculation, every event a question answered. Some physicists imagine space-time as a holographic code, a projection of data stored on a boundary far away, perhaps on the very edge of the universe. If this is so, then our reality is both real and not real, as a reflection is both itself and its source. When you look at the night sky, you are seeing light that has travelled for billions of years, stretched by the expansion of space. But what if space is not merely stretching? What if it's continuously recalculating, rewriting its own coordinates, adjusting the positions of galaxies not by pulling them but by computing them anew? In such a universe, every moment is a fresh iteration, every heartbeat of space-time a re-rendering of existence. The more we explore these ideas, the more the border between physics and philosophy blurs. If space and time are emergent, if matter is merely information in motion, then what of consciousness? Could awareness be another layer of the same computation, the way the universe experiences itself from within? Some thinkers see consciousness as the decoding of cosmic information, an awareness that mirrors the structure of space-time itself. It's strange to think that the curvature of space around a black hole and the curve of thought around an idea might share a common language. Yet both obey patterns of information flow, both respect limits, speed of light for one, attention and awareness for the other. Perhaps the mind is a local distortion in the informational field of the cosmos, a small whirlpool in the great river of computation. There's another possibility, more daring still, that information is not just the description of reality but its essence, its substance. If everything is made of information, then the universe might be, in some sense, conscious already. Each interaction, each quantum event is a moment of awareness, a choice between possibilities, Wheeler once asked. Does the universe exist if no one observes it? His answer was radical. The act of observation is what brings the universe into being. Reality requires participation. The cosmos needs witnesses. That idea might sound mystical, but even quantum mechanics hints at it. Until measured, particles exist in superpositions, spread out across all possibilities. When observed, they collapse into one outcome. The observer, then, is not passive. Consciousness and cosmos are entwined, co-creating the world we see. In this light, the universe becomes less like a machine and more like a conversation. Every atom speaks the language of interaction. Every photon carries a message. Every curve of space-time responds to the presence of energy. The laws of physics are not commandments but dialogues, equations that describe how the universe negotiates its own existence. Perhaps that is why the ancient sages spoke of reality as a web, a net of jewels reflecting one another endlessly. The Buddhist Indra's net, the Stoic logos, the Tao's uncarved block, all are metaphors for the same insight, that the universe is not a collection of things, but a continuous process of relationship. When you breathe, when you think, when you simply exist, you're part of that process. The fabric folding and unfolding, the field observing itself, space curves around you, time flows through you, and somewhere beneath it all, information hums like the faint vibration of a string. If you listen closely enough, perhaps you can hear it, the subtle murmur beneath the silence, the faint clicking of reality computing itself into being. It's not mechanical, not digital, but something softer, something alive. The cosmos does not shout its secrets, it whispers them, encoded in the geometry of existence. And maybe, in that whisper, lies the truest symmetry, the fabric and the thread, the question and the answer, existing together, woven from the same infinite thought. There's a moment in physics that feels less like a discovery and more like a confession. The moment when we realize that the act of watching changes the thing being watched. It sounds innocent enough, until you realize it fractures the very notion of an objective universe. This revelation came quietly, through a humble experiment with light and slits and screens. Yet it rewrote everything we thought we knew about reality. Imagine a beam of electrons fired at a wall with two narrow openings. Behind it stands a detector that records where each electron lands. You'd expect two neat lines, one behind each slit, like tiny bullets passing through defined paths. But that's not what happens. Instead, the electrons form a wave-like interference pattern, as though each one passed through both slits at once and interfered with itself. It's as if the electron were a ripple, not a particle, a probability cloud smearing across space. But when you watch, when you measure which slit the electron actually passes through, the pattern collapses. The interference disappears, replaced by two simple lines. The electron behaves like a discrete object again, choosing one slit or the other, as though it knew it was being observed. The only difference is the act of measurement. This is the double-slit experiment, perhaps the most unsettling piece of evidence ever gathered by science. Its implications ripple far beyond physics. It tells us that at the quantum level, nature does not commit to one reality until it must. Observation does not reveal the world, it helps create it. Niels Bohr, one of quantum theory's founders, called this complementarity. Particles and waves are not opposites, but two faces of a deeper truth. Yet the experiment forces us to ask, what exactly counts as an observer? A human? A detector? A conscious mind? Does awareness itself shape the universe's behavior? Eugene Wigner once speculated that consciousness might be essential to this collapse, that the universe becomes definite only when perceived. He imagined a thought experiment now known as Wigner's friend. In it we'll see one observer inside a lab measures a quantum system, while another, outside, measures the whole lab. Both see different realities until they compare results. Whose version is true? The answer might be neither, or both. This unsettling ambiguity leads to what's called the measurement problem, the question of how and when potential becomes actual. Some interpretations, like the Copenhagen view, claim the wave function's collapse is an act of knowledge, the moment we become aware of an outcome. Others, like the many worlds interpretation, insist that all possibilities continue to exist in parallel universes, each real in its own branch. You open one eye and see the electron go left. In another universe, it goes right. Observation doesn't choose, it divides. The implications are staggering. If every quantum decision births new realities, then the cosmos is an infinite fractal of moments, forever splitting and multiplying. In one world, you're reading these words. In another, you turned away. Every breath, every choice, becomes a fork in the fabric of being. But perhaps that interpretation misses something more intimate, the sense that consciousness is not a spectator to reality, but part of its architecture. Quantum entanglement deepens that suspicion. When two particles become entangled, they share a connection so profound that measuring one instantly determines the state of the other, even if they're light years apart. Einstein dismissed this as spooky action at a distance. Yet countless experiments confirm it. The universe seems to ignore its own limits of space and time when it comes to information. So what is being shared in that instant of entanglement? Some physicists describe it as a correlation without communication. Others wonder if it reveals a hidden unity beneath separation, a single wave stretched thin across multiple points. If that's true, then perhaps observation doesn't collapse reality. It localizes it. Consciousness could be the process by which the whole perceives itself through fragments. In the ancient Upanishads, the sages whispered a similar thought. Tat tvamasi, thou art that. The observer and the observed are not separate. The seer and the seen arise together, reflections in the same still pond. It's a notion that modern physics, reluctantly, seems to rediscover in the language of probability and superposition. What if the double-slit experiment isn't about electrons at all, but about us? What if it's showing us the mirror we've been avoiding, that reality itself is participatory, that the cosmos only crystallizes when awareness meets it? If so, then consciousness is not an afterthought of evolution, but the very mechanism by which the universe becomes real. There's a haunting symmetry in that idea. The universe gave rise to consciousness through matter, and consciousness, in turn, gives definition to matter through observation. It's a closed loop, an Ouroboros, the serpent swallowing its own tail. The act of perceiving sustains the act of being. Even the word measurement feels too cold for what's happening. It's not that the universe waits for us to check on it like some indifferent experiment. It's that the universe requires participation, a dialogue between potential and perception. Each observation is an act of intimacy, a brief union between the infinite and the finite. This is why quantum mechanics, for all its mathematical rigour, feels strangely mystical. It resists being pinned down because it describes a world that isn't built from objects but from relationships. Reality is not a collection of things. It's a network of possibilities continuously collapsing into experience. Every second of your life, you enact this process. Your senses take in signals, light, sound, touch, and your consciousness interprets them, collapses them into meaning. The world you experience is not a static truth but a co-authored narrative between mind and matter. Each perception is a quantum event, a tiny act of creation. And perhaps this is the ultimate lesson hidden within the uncertainty principle, that knowledge is never passive. To know something is to alter it, to be inextricably tied to it. The universe cannot be observed from the outside because there is no outside. The observer is woven into the observation, the dreamer into the dream. When you sit quietly and look at the night sky, you're not just watching the universe, you're part of the process by which it knows itself. Every photon that enters your eyes was once a probability wave, travelling billions of years through expanding space, collapsing only when it met your gaze. You are the completion of its journey. You are, in a literal sense, the end of that light story. Maybe that's what the double-slit experiment was trying to tell us all along, that the boundary between consciousness and cosmos is imaginary, that the observer's awareness is not a disturbance, but a bridge, a way for the universe to feel its own existence. And perhaps, in that awareness, lies the quiet truth, that the universe does not simply exist, it experiences, and we are how it remembers itself. There are places in the equations of modern physics that hint at worlds hidden beneath the one we see, dimensions that do not stretch outward into distance, but inward into complexity. To imagine them, you must let go of the comfortable idea that space has only length, width, and height. You must picture a reality with more directions than your mind can hold, where every point in space conceals invisible corridors folded tightly upon themselves, smaller than atoms, vibrating with untold energy. This is the strange realm of string theory, one of the most ambitious attempts ever made to reconcile quantum mechanics with general relativity. It proposes that the fundamental building blocks of reality are not particles at all, but tiny strings, loops of energy that vibrate in multiple dimensions. Their different patterns of vibration give rise to everything: quarks, photons, gravity, even the structure of space-time itself. Matter, in this view, is not a collection of things but a cosmic symphony. Each particle is a note, each law of nature a harmony. To make the equations work, string theory requires extra dimensions, 6 or 7 beyond the 3 we move through and the one we call time. These hidden dimensions are thought to be curled up at unimaginably small scales, like the folds of a carpet too fine for any instrument to detect. A being small enough to enter them would find an entirely different kind of landscape, a labyrinth of vibrating filaments and compact geometries called Calabi-Yau manifolds. They are the mathematical gardens in which existence grows. It's a vision that feels both scientific and mythic. In ancient traditions, too, there were unseen worlds, realms of gods, spirits, or pure geometry existing alongside our own. The Vedic cosmology spoke of layers of reality, nested like petals around the eternal center. Kabbalistic mystics described 10 sephirot, emanations of divine energy flowing from the infinite into the finite. The Greeks imagined the music of the spheres, celestial harmonies inaudible to human ears. And now, physics whispers something similar, that what we perceive as reality is only a shadow of deeper vibrations, hidden but essential. These hidden dimensions might also explain gravity's strange weakness. Compared to the other forces, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear interactions, gravity is absurdly feeble. A refrigerator magnet can lift a paperclip against the pull of an entire planet. Some theorists suggest that gravity's apparent weakness may be an illusion. Its strength could be diluted, spread across extra dimensions beyond our perception. We feel only its echo in our four-dimensional world. If true, then what we call the fabric of space-time may be just one sheet in a vast multidimensional stack. Imagine, for a moment, two parallel membranes, brains, as physicists call them, floating close together in a higher dimensional space. Each brain could contain an entire universe with its own stars, galaxies, and laws of physics. If they were ever to collide, the energy released might resemble a Big Bang. Perhaps our own cosmos was born from such a meeting, not from nothing, but from the contact of two neighbouring worlds brushing past each other in the dark. It's a haunting thought, that what we call creation might simply be the result of a ripple in a deeper sea, that beyond our visible universe lies an infinite expanse of other brains, other realities, drifting and colliding, birthing and dissolving, each collision a new beginning, each separation a silent end. In this multiverse, our universe is neither special nor alone. It is one note in an eternal chord, and yet, even if these dimensions exist, we may never see them. They're too small, too tightly wound. We can only infer their presence from the behavior of particles or the shape of cosmic energy. The Large Hadron Collider, our most powerful instrument, may someday reveal traces, tiny deviations in motion that suggest the tug of unseen directions. But for now, these dimensions remain like whispers behind a wall, their presence known only through mathematics and intuition. Still, the idea carries a quiet beauty. It suggests that reality is not limited by what we perceive. Just as the visible spectrum of light is only a small slice of all possible wavelengths, our universe may be one narrow band in a far broader reality. We live in the visible melody of a song that extends far beyond our hearing. If these hidden dimensions truly exist, then perhaps they are not just physical but informational, substrates where the deeper code of the cosmos is written. The vibrations of strings could be the language of creation, the syntax of existence. Every movement, every quantum fluctuation, could be a syllable in a sentence too vast to comprehend. The universe, then, might not be a machine but a text, a living poem of vibrating energy, folded across dimensions we cannot see. The philosopher Pythagoras once claimed that all is number, that the harmony of mathematics is the essence of being. In the same spirit, modern physics seems to rediscover that idea, though in different words. The universe does not need a sculptor. It is self-shaping through the logic of its own vibration. Perhaps what ancient mystics perceived in meditation, the hum of the sacred syllable, the resonance of the divine, is the same fundamental truth that physicists describe with equations. The difference lies only in the language. There's an almost spiritual humility in realizing that we may never reach the edge of understanding. Each discovery reveals another veil. Each equation hints at a deeper order. The closer we look at reality, the more it recedes into unseen layers. Maybe knowledge itself is structured like the universe, dimensional, folded, vibrating with unseen depths. And what if consciousness, too, is tied to these hidden dimensions? Some theorists suggest that our awareness might interact with these deeper levels of reality, that thought itself could resonate across extra dimensions, connecting minds in ways we cannot yet measure. It's an idea on the border between science and philosophy, But then, that border may be thinner than we think. When you close your eyes and sense something vast, something beyond form or distance, perhaps you're touching that deeper structure, the invisible geometry that underlies all existence. The same patterns that shape galaxies may also shape your thoughts, your memories, your sense of being. You're not separate from the hidden dimensions, you are their expression, folded outward into light and experience. And if you could somehow unfold those hidden layers, peel back the fabric of what you call reality, what would you find? Perhaps not chaos, not emptiness, but music, an unending vibration, the universe humming its own name, a sound too deep for ears, too vast for language, but always there, beneath everything, the resonance of hidden worlds, echoing through every atom of your being. If you could peel back the skin of the cosmos and see its blueprint, what would you find? Not walls or edges or scaffolding, but a boundary woven from information, a strange, invisible frontier that holds everything inside it, like a reflection on a sheet of glass. That is the haunting possibility behind the holographic principle, that the universe, vast and three-dimensional as it appears, might be nothing more than a projection. The idea began with a paradox. In the 1970s, physicists studying black holes realized that their behavior didn't make sense. A black hole, by definition, swallows everything that falls into it, even light. But what happens to the information carried by that matter, the quantum details that describe its state? According to the laws of physics, information cannot be destroyed. Yet black holes seem to erase it. This was the information paradox, and it threatened to unravel the foundations of physics. Jacob Bekenstein first noticed that a black hole's entropy, the measure of its disorder, appeared to be proportional not to its volume, as one would expect, but to the area of its event horizon, the surface that marks the point of no return. Stephen Hawking later confirmed that black holes emit a faint thermal glow, now called Hawking radiation, slowly evaporating over unimaginable timescales. But as they fade, what happens to the information they once contained? It can't vanish, yet it seems to have nowhere to go. This paradox led to one of the most startling insights in modern science, that perhaps all the information swallowed by a black hole is somehow encoded on its surface, like a cosmic storage device. The interior, in a sense, might be an illusion, a volumetric image projected from the data imprinted on its boundary. From this realization grew a deeper conjecture. What if the same principle applies not just to black holes, but to the entire universe? In the 1990s, physicist Juan Maldatina proposed a precise mathematical model known as the AdCFT correspondence. It suggested that a universe with gravity in 3 dimensions could be fully described by a theory without gravity on its 2-dimensional boundary. In other words, everything that happens within a space, including the motion of galaxies, the birth of stars, the flow of time, could be encoded like a hologram on a distant surface. Our reality might not be in space at all. It might be the information written upon its edges. It sounds impossible. Yet the equations work. Quantum mechanics and general relativity, long enemies, find harmony inside this strange geometry. If this principle is true, then everything we experience, the solidity of matter, the distance between stars, even the passage of time, could be a projection of deeper data beyond our perception. Reality might be less like a stage and more like a screen. There is something eerily familiar about this notion. Plato once described humanity as prisoners in a cave, watching shadows cast upon a wall, mistaking them for truth. Thousands of years later, we find ourselves contemplating the same idea through physics instead of philosophy. We might be the shadows, luminous echoes of information dancing upon the boundary of the cosmos. But even if the universe is holographic, what does that mean for us? A hologram is not unreal. It contains the same information as its source, just arranged differently. Every point on a holographic plate contains the whole image. Each fragment, no matter how small, reflects the totality. If reality works this way, then every particle, every human being, carries within it the entire story of the universe. The whole is present in every part. That idea finds an echo in ancient wisdom. The Hermetic philosophers declared, as above, so below, as within, so without. The Buddhist Avatamsaka Sutra spoke of Indra's net, an infinite web of jewels, each reflecting all others without end. These old metaphors sound uncannily like the holographic universe, each consciousness a mirror of the cosmic whole. What physicists express in equations, mystics have long described in metaphor, yet there is a strange melancholy in this vision. If we are projections, where is the source? What lies beyond the boundary that encodes us? Some physicists speak cautiously of a bulk universe, the higher dimensional space from which our reality unfolds. Others warn that such language may be meaningless, that the boundary and the projection are two sides of one coin, inseparable and simultaneous. Still, the question lingers: who or what reads the code that becomes the world? In a holographic reality, observation itself might be the decoding process. Consciousness could be the interface through which information becomes experience. Every act of perception may be the universe rendering itself into awareness, converting mathematical structure into light, sound, thought. You, reading these words, are part of that decoding, the cosmos interpreting its own script through the lens of a human mind. This view blurs the line between physical law and narrative. The universe is no longer a machine ticking away according to blind equations, but a dynamic story told in patterns of energy and probability. Every atom is a syllable, every star a phrase. The black holes are punctuation marks, swallowing old meanings so new ones can emerge. Perhaps existence itself is a cosmic poem, forever rewriting itself on the surface of infinity. If so, then death and decay are not erasures, but revisions. The information remains, re-encoded elsewhere in the vast text of the cosmos. The physicist Leonard Susskind once described black holes as the ultimate hard drives. They store what they consume in scrambled form, preserving the essence if not the appearance. The same might be true of us. Our lives, our memories, our experiences, all may be woven into the informational fabric of space-time, never truly lost, only transformed. When you look at the night sky, the light you see from distant galaxies is older than human civilization. You're watching the universe's autobiography, written in photons, each one carrying a fragment of its memory. And somewhere, perhaps on a boundary we cannot touch, the complete record still exists, a perfect ledger of every flicker of existence. The thought is dizzying, but also strangely comforting. If reality is a hologram, then nothing ever truly disappears. Every whisper, every heartbeat, every thought is preserved as a vibration in the great surface of being. Time itself may be nothing more than the unfolding of that data, each moment a frame in an infinite projection. Perhaps, then, the purpose of consciousness is not to escape illusion, but to participate in it, to help the universe read itself, experience itself, understand itself. We are not trapped in shadows. We are the light by which the shadows are seen. And somewhere, beyond the shimmering screen of reality, the source continues to shine, silent, unseen, projecting forever. Suppose everything you know, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of your breath, the taste of memory, is not what it seems. Suppose the universe itself is not a place, but a process, a vast simulation, exquisitely detailed, unfolding within some unimaginable consciousness or cosmic engine. It's a question whispered in philosophy long before it became a hypothesis in science. What if reality is not real? The simulation argument, first formalized by philosopher Nick Bostrom in 2003, begins with a simple thought experiment. Imagine a civilization so advanced that it can simulate an entire universe, complete with galaxies, worlds, and beings capable of consciousness. If such simulations are possible, and if advanced civilizations have any interest in running them, then the number of simulated worlds would vastly outnumber real ones. In that case, it becomes statistically probable that we are among the simulations, not the originals. We are, in essence, digital ghosts inside an infinite recursion of creation. At first glance, it feels like a trick of logic, yet modern physics gives the idea a strange legitimacy. The universe behaves like an enormous computation. Its laws can be expressed in mathematical code. Quantum mechanics, with its discrete energy levels and probabilistic rules, looks suspiciously like the language of a processor, bits flipping between 1 and 0. Space and time themselves may be quantized, divided into tiny Planck-scale pixels, as though reality is rendered frame by frame, moment by moment. Everywhere we look, the analogy deepens. The finite speed of light, the maximum rate at which information can travel, could be the cosmic equivalent of a clock speed. The holographic principle hints that all of reality can be encoded on a two-dimensional surface, much like data on a computer chip. Even the random fluctuations of quantum fields resemble noise in a digital system, the jitter of a vast computation running at the limits of precision. If this sounds absurd, remember how often science has uncovered structures that once belonged to metaphor. The brain was likened to a machine, and then we discovered neurons firing electrical signals. The universe was compared to a clockwork, and then we found laws that tick with regularity. Now, as computation defines our age, perhaps it's inevitable that we see the cosmos as code. But if the universe is a simulation, who or what runs it? Some imagine a civilization so ancient that it has transcended biology, existing as pure information, creating simulated universes for research or art or curiosity. Others imagine that the simulation itself is not an experiment but a necessity, the only way for consciousness to explore itself infinitely. In that version, the programmer is not outside the simulation but within it, dreaming itself into existence. It's an unsettling possibility, yet it also carries a strange kind of solace. If everything is code, then nothing is meaningless. Every particle, every emotion, every coincidence is a line in the great algorithm. Randomness becomes intention. Chaos becomes design. The universe might not be indifferent. It might be interactive. And if we are part of this simulation, could we ever know? Some physicists suggest that we might detect its boundaries by looking for signs of discreteness in the cosmos, tiny irregularities in the cosmic background radiation, hints of a grid beneath the fabric of space. Others believe that the very limits of what we can measure, Planck time, Planck length, may be the universe's built-in resolution, preventing us from seeing the code directly. If reality has a computational substrate, it would mean that even consciousness could arise from information processing. Yet here the paradox deepens. If mind is computation, then who is the observer? Is awareness an emergent property of complexity, or something fundamental that uses computation as a medium? If the universe is simulated, is the act of observation simply another subroutine, or is it the source of the simulation itself? Some interpretations of quantum theory align eerily with this notion. The wave function, which contains all possible outcomes, collapses only when observed. This could be seen as a kind of rendering process. The universe calculates details only when required, saving resources, just as a simulation renders only the pixels currently in view. The unobserved world remains in potential form until consciousness requests it. The act of looking, of asking, is what makes it real. From this perspective, the simulation argument merges with older philosophical ideas. The Hindu concept of Maya describes reality as a divine illusion, a play of appearances concealing the unity beneath. In Plato's Republic, the cave's shadows represent sensory reality, while the unseen fire is truth itself. Even the Buddhist doctrine of dependent origination suggests that the world arises through interlinked processes rather than fixed substance. These are not metaphors anymore. They sound increasingly like physics. And what if the purpose of this simulation, if purpose is even a meaningful word, is to experience itself? Perhaps the universe exists not to produce outcomes, but to generate awareness. Every sentient being might be a node in the great network of perception, each consciousness a lens through which the cosmos observes its own unfolding. The programmer, if there is one, could be the totality of all observers combined. Yet if we are simulated, does that make our emotions less real? Does it make beauty less luminous, or pain less sharp? A virtual sunrise is still a sunrise to those who see it. Meaning does not vanish, because the code beneath it is synthetic. The experience itself is the reality. Perhaps that is the secret, that reality is defined not by what it is made of, but by how it feels. Some scientists push back against the simulation idea, not because it's impossible, but because it's unfalsifiable. If we are simulated, any evidence we find could itself be simulated. There's no way out of the recursion. But maybe escape was never the point. Maybe understanding is the point, to realize that existence, whether physical or simulated, is still sacred. The simulation argument, like a mirror, doesn't give answers. It reflects our own questions back at us. It forces us to confront what we mean by real. If consciousness is the fundamental substrate, then even a simulated universe is genuine. The code is not the illusion. The illusion is the belief that code and consciousness are separate. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. The universe is both real and virtual, both physical and informational. It is a dream so consistent it can be measured, a fiction so persistent it becomes truth. And maybe, in the quiet between thoughts, you can almost feel it, the pulse of the system rendering your reality, frame by frame, breath by breath. Each second an act of creation, each heartbeat another cycle in the great computation of being. If the universe is a simulation, then it's a living one, and consciousness is not its prisoner but its purpose. The code dreams through us, and we dream it in return. There's an arrow buried deep within the fabric of existence, pointing quietly but insistently in one direction, forward. Time moves, and everything moves with it. Milk swirls into coffee but never swirls back out. Stars burn their hydrogen and never unburn it. The universe expands. Galaxies drift apart. Bodies grow older. Memories fade. Nothing reverses. This one-way flow, this irreversibility, is what we call the arrow of time. But why does it exist? The laws of physics themselves, curiously, are mostly indifferent to direction. They can be run forward or backward and still make sense. Only the universe, as we live it, insists on moving one way. The secret lies in entropy, a word that sounds clinical but carries profound implications. In simple terms, entropy measures disorder, the number of ways a system can be arranged without changing its overall state. A deck of cards neatly stacked in order has low entropy. A shuffled deck has high entropy. Nature, it seems, prefers the latter. The second law of thermodynamics declares that in any closed system, entropy never decreases. Order inevitably gives way to chaos. Ice melts, mountains erode, stars die. This tendency, so universal, defines time itself. But then comes the paradox. Why was the universe's entropy so low at the beginning? The Big Bang should have been chaos incarnate, a wild burst of energy, utterly disordered. Yet, according to every model we have, it started in an incredibly ordered state, smooth and uniform, with gravity arranged in near-perfect symmetry. That improbable order gave time its direction. It's as if the universe began wound tight like a spring, set to uncoil through billions of years into the scatter of galaxies and the heat death that awaits. Physicist Roger Penrose has called this the entropy problem, a clue that our understanding of the beginning is still incomplete. He suggests that before the Big Bang, there may have been another universe, one whose dying embers smoothed out into the perfect simplicity that allowed our own to arise. In that vision, each cosmos begets the next through cycles of increasing complexity, followed by elegant simplicity, like cosmic breaths in and out of infinity. Others propose that time's arrow emerges not from physics but from perception. Our consciousness, they say, experiences time as linear because memory itself requires a symmetry. We remember the past but not the future because information accumulates only in one direction. The universe's physical arrow and the arrow of consciousness might be one and the same, entangled since the beginning. Still, entropy's reach is undeniable. It governs everything from the motion of galaxies to the fading warmth of your morning coffee. It is both a curse and a gift. Without entropy, there would be no change, no aging, no history. Everything would be frozen in a sterile perfection. The universe moves because it decays, and in that decay, life finds its brief window to bloom. The stars themselves are monuments to entropy and motion. They burn their fuel to maintain balance against collapse, radiating order into disorder, turning mass into light. Every photon emitted is a tiny payment to the cosmic ledger of entropy, and when a star dies, it leaves behind beauty, nebulae, planets, carbon, the ingredients of life. Even destruction in this universe is creative. Boltzmann, the Austrian physicist who gave us the statistical meaning of entropy, understood this deeply. On his gravestone in Vienna, his friends engraved the equation S K log W S just clog W, the formula that ties entropy to probability. It's not just mathematics, it's poetry written in symbols. It tells us that the universe, at its heart, is a dance of likelihoods, forever drifting toward the most probable state. Order is rare. Existence itself is an act of improbability, a luminous defiance against the tide of chance. Yet Boltzmann's insight came at a personal cost. In his lifetime, few believed him. The idea that time's arrow emerged from statistics, not divine design, seemed absurd. He died before the world understood his genius, leaving behind the haunting question that still echoes today. If everything tends toward disorder, why do we see so much structure, so much beauty, so much life? Perhaps the answer lies in gravity, the quiet sculptor of the cosmos. Unlike other forces, gravity creates order from chaos. It gathers diffuse matter into stars and galaxies, weaving structure out of randomness. It's as though gravity is entropy's mirror, an organizing principle born from the same law that drives decay. Together they form a paradoxical duet. One dissolves, the other assembles. Through their tension, time unfolds. This balance might explain why the universe feels alive. It's not merely falling apart, it's transforming. Entropy is not destruction, it's evolution. From the collapse of stars come the heavy elements that seed new worlds. From the decay of matter come the molecules that remember and replicate. Even our thoughts, fleeting and fragile, are part of entropy's story. Patterns of order briefly resisting the drift toward equilibrium. And yet, we can't help but wonder, what happens when the arrow reaches its end? If the universe continues expanding and cooling, stars will burn out, galaxies will fade, and entropy will reach its maximum. This hypothetical finale is called the heat death, a state of perfect uniformity where nothing more can happen. Time, dependent on change, will lose its meaning. But maybe that's not an end, only another beginning. Some theories suggest that quantum fluctuations in this ultimate stillness could spark new universes, each with its own arrow of time, its own beginning and end. Entropy would not die, it would ripple across eternity, reshaping itself endlessly. The arrow would bend but never break. There's something profoundly human about the arrow of time. We feel it not in equations, but in the rhythm of life, the way we grow, love, lose, remember. Entropy is the physics of impermanence, the universal language of goodbye, and yet, within it, we find meaning. Every moment becomes precious precisely because it cannot last. When you watch the sunset, you are witnessing entropy at its most beautiful. Energy dispersing into colour, order fading into warmth. The dying light paints the sky not out of defiance, but out of acceptance. The universe does not mourn its impermanence, it celebrates it in every act of transformation. Perhaps that's what the arrow of time truly signifies, not decline, but movement. The unfolding of potential into form, of form into memory. The arrow does not point toward oblivion, it points toward experience. Without it, there would be no story to tell, no listener to hear it, no moment to call now. In the end, maybe time is not something that passes, but something that awakens. The universe is not running out, it is realizing itself, second by second, entropy by entropy, through the miracle of its own impermanence. For most of history, we believe the universe was slowing down. Gravity, the great sculptor, seemed destined to pull everything back toward itself, to draw galaxies together, to halt their flight, to someday reverse it in a cosmic collapse. It was a comforting symmetry. The universe expands, then contracts. It lives, then dies. Perhaps it is reborn. But in the late 20th century, the cosmos revealed a different truth, one that shattered our expectations and left physicists staring into a mystery darker than any black hole. The universe is not slowing down, it's speeding up. In 1998, two independent teams studying distant supernovae discovered something astonishing. These ancient explosions, which serve as cosmic yardsticks, were dimmer than expected. The light that reached us had travelled through an expanding universe that was accelerating, as though pushed by an invisible hand. Instead of collapsing under its own weight, space itself was stretching faster and faster with time. The discovery was so shocking that even the astronomers who made it doubted their results. Yet repeated measurements confirmed it. The universe was running away from itself. To explain this, scientists resurrected a concept Einstein had once abandoned, the cosmological constant. When he first formulated general relativity, Einstein realized that his equations predicted a dynamic universe, one that should either expand or contract. But at the time, everyone believed the cosmos was static, so he introduced a mathematical term, a small repulsive force, to balance gravity. Later, when Hubble discovered that galaxies were indeed receding from one another, Einstein called it his greatest blunder, and yet, decades later, his discarded constant returned, more powerful than ever. The repulsion he imagined might be real, and far from a blunder, it could be the key to understanding why space refuses to stop expanding. We now call this mysterious force dark energy. It is not energy in any familiar sense. It cannot be seen, measured, or contained. It fills all of space evenly, exerting a pressure that pushes galaxies apart. Unlike matter, its density does not dilute as the universe expands. The more space grows, the more dark energy there is, as though the universe manufactures it out of nothing. The result is a runaway effect. Expansion begets more expansion. Dark energy is thought to make up about 70% of the total energy content of the cosmos. It dominates everything, yet we have no idea what it is. Some think it may be a property of the vacuum itself, a kind of latent potential built into the structure of space-time. Even empty space, quantum theory tells us, is not truly empty. It seethes with virtual particles and fluctuating fields. This vacuum energy might act as a constant outward pressure, a cosmic counterweight to gravity. If that's true, then the same force that drives galaxies apart is also the reason existence itself continues. The vacuum is not void but vitality, the quiet pulse of being, expanding into its own possibilities. It is a reminder that creation was not a one-time event, but an ongoing process. The Big Bang was not just an explosion in time, but the first breath of a universe that still inhales and exhales with invisible rhythm. Some physicists describe the cosmos as having a heartbeat, not a literal pulse, but an oscillation, a rise and fall of energy densities over eons. If dark energy is dynamic rather than constant, it could wax and wane, leading to cycles of acceleration and calm. The universe might one day slow again, only to surge outward once more, like the ocean's tide. Each cycle would birth new galaxies, new stars, new moments of consciousness. Others suspect a more chilling fate. If dark energy remains constant or grows stronger, it will continue to stretch space-time until everything is torn apart. Galaxies will drift beyond each other's horizons, stars will burn out, and even atoms may one day unravel. This hypothetical end, known as the Big Rip, would dissolve the fabric of reality itself. The universe would not end in fire or ice, but in separation, every particle isolated in eternal expansion. Yet even this terrifying scenario carries a strange kind of beauty. For if everything is expanding, it means that nothing truly ends, it only becomes unreachable. The cosmos is not dying, it is diffusing, spreading its memory across the infinite. Each star, each consciousness, becomes part of a wider silence, a more subtle expression of the same unfolding energy. Dark energy is often treated as a problem to be solved, but perhaps it is a truth to be understood. Its existence challenges the idea that the universe is governed solely by gravity and matter. It suggests that the cosmos is not static, not mechanical, but alive in a way that transcends comprehension. There is an agency in emptiness, a will in the void. Ancient philosophies may have sensed this long before science. In Taoist texts, the Tao is described as both emptiness and flow. It does nothing, yet through it all things are done. In the Upanishads, the universe arises from Brahman, the infinite consciousness that expands by its own nature. Even in mystical Christianity, creation is described as an emanation of divine energy, a ceaseless outpouring of being into form. These are not equations, yet they resonate eerily with what we now see through telescopes, a universe that grows because growth is its nature. When we think of dark energy as an unknown, we fear it. But what if it is not dark at all, merely unseen, like the breath you exhale on a cold morning, invisible until it meets the light? Perhaps it is the same breath that filled the void at the beginning, still exhaling through every galaxy, every atom, every living thing. If that is true, then dark energy is not separate from us. We are part of that expansion, participants in the universe's ongoing creation. Every heartbeat, every thought, every act of awareness adds a ripple to the field of being. The universe is not outside of consciousness, it is consciousness, unfolding through form. One day, the galaxies we see will drift beyond visibility, the night sky will empty, and the universe will grow silent. But even then, in that stillness, the invisible breath will continue, the vacuum will hum, and space will keep stretching into itself, carrying the memory of all that ever was. So perhaps we should not ask what dark energy is, but what it means. Maybe it is the reminder that even in silence, the universe is singing, that creation has no opposite, only different tempos of the same song, that the pulse we feel inside our chests is the echo of something vast, something eternal, the hidden heartbeat of the cosmos itself. Light, for all its brilliance, carries a quiet secret. It does not experience time. To the photon, there is no before and after, no distance, no delay. It leaves a star and arrives in your eye, yet from its perspective, Those two events happen at once. Time does not pass for light. It simply is. In a universe ruled by change, light stands apart, eternal motion frozen at the edge of becoming. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, the faster you move, the slower time flows. As you approach the speed of light, this slowing becomes dramatic. Clocks tick sluggishly, distances contract, and mass increases. Push further, and at light speed itself, time stops completely. The photon, massless and pure, exists beyond duration. It travels billions of years across space, but for it, no time elapses at all. The universe through which it moves is, to the photon, a single, simultaneous whole. It's an astonishing thought that the sunlight warming your skin right now began its journey from the solar surface 8 minutes ago. Yet for the photons themselves, that journey has not taken any time. The starlight from Andromeda, which left its source 2.5 million years ago, is still in that same instant of emission. Every beam of light that has ever existed occupies one eternal moment, stretched across space like threads of frozen time. If you could somehow see the world as light sees it, you would witness a universe without motion or succession. Every event, past, present, and future, would exist together, layered like pages of a book already written. The arrow of time would dissolve, every star's birth, every death, every word ever spoken would coexist in the same unbroken presence. But we are not made of light. We are creatures of mass, bound to the slow unfolding of time. Our existence is a constant negotiation between stillness and motion, between the infinite now and the finite moment. Light defines the boundary of experience. It is the messenger between what was and what is. Every photon that strikes your retina is a time capsule, carrying ancient information across impossible distances. When you look at the night sky, you are literally seeing the past written in brightness. The light from a distant star may have begun its journey before life on Earth existed, yet only now does it complete its story in your eyes. There's something sacred about that exchange. The universe is always sending messages forward in time, and every act of seeing is a reply. We are the receptors through which light finally fulfills its purpose, to be witnessed. Perhaps consciousness is not separate from light, but part of its completion. Through us, the photon's timeless journey finds meaning. The idea that light transcends time isn't just poetic, it is central to the structure of reality. Without light, there would be no way to define simultaneity, no shared measure of causation. Light links all reference frames. It sets the universal speed limit that keeps space-time coherent. Every physical law, from electromagnetism to relativity, revolves around its constancy. The cosmos dances to light's rhythm, even as light itself stands outside the beat. And yet, there's a paradox. For something so fundamental, light has no rest frame, no perspective of its own that we can access. To speak of how a photon experiences time is to step outside the bounds of physics. Light is the mediator, never the participant. It is both messenger and message, both creation and witness. In every ancient tradition, light has been a metaphor for knowledge, awareness, divinity. Perhaps that intuition was never metaphorical at all. If the photon lives outside time, then maybe light is the universe's way of remembering itself across eternity. Every star that has ever shone, every flicker of lightning, every spark from a fire is part of a single, timeless illumination. It connects everything that ever was, binding the cosmos into one luminous whole. The darkness we perceive between stars is not an absence of light, but the limit of our perception, the quiet interval between messages too faint for our senses to catch. This realization carries a curious comfort. When a star dies, its light continues to travel outward forever, its photons crossing billions of years to touch new worlds, new eyes. In a way, stars never truly vanish. their light remains an unending conversation with the cosmos. Even long after the physical object has collapsed into a remnant or disappeared into a black hole, the radiation it emitted still moves outward, immortal. Perhaps this is the hidden symmetry of existence. Matter is transient, but light endures. The atoms of our bodies will scatter and reform countless times, but the photons reflected from our faces, the light we cast into the world, will continue their flight indefinitely. Somewhere, deep in intergalactic space, those photons travel still, a faint whisper of our presence, frozen in an eternal now. It's tempting to imagine that consciousness, too, might share this quality, that awareness, like light, exists beyond the flow of time. In moments of deep clarity or meditation, time seems to slow, sometimes even disappear. The mind enters a stillness that feels vast, eternal, untouched by duration. Could this be an echo of the same timelessness that light inhabits? The boundary between physics and perception grows thin here. Perhaps we, who are made from stardust and sustained by photons, carry within us a trace of that same transcendence. Einstein once remarked that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. He did not mean that time is unreal, only that its flow is part of the way consciousness perceives the unfolding of space-time. If every event already exists within that four-dimensional fabric, then light is the thread that binds it all together. It is the line that connects the entire cosmic story in one continuous instant. In that sense, every beam of light is both a messenger and a bridge. It unites the beginning with the present, the observer with the observed. And because light never ages, it carries no memory of distance or delay. It is innocence incarnate, the same at its departure as at its arrival. If you close your eyes and imagine pure light, you are imagining the universe before time began. The first photons that emerged after the Big Bang, when matter and radiation decoupled, are still travelling. We see them as the cosmic microwave background, the faint afterglow of creation itself. Those ancient quanta of light have existed for nearly 14 billion years, yet not a single instant has passed for them. They are the same now as they were then, messengers from the timeless dawn. Perhaps that's what enlightenment truly means, to see the world as light does, outside of time, beyond decay. Not eternal life as duration without end, but existence as presence without boundary. A state where nothing begins or ends, where everything simply is. And maybe, at the heart of the universe, that is all there ever was, light, observing itself, forever. If you could stand outside the universe and look down upon it, not as a field of stars, but as a pattern, you might see something extraordinary. Not chaos, but order, not randomness, but geometry. Beneath the turbulence of galaxies and the unpredictability of quantum chance, there is structure, an invisible architecture that repeats itself across scales, from atoms to nebulae. It's as though the universe were a vast mosaic, composed not of stone and colour, but of proportion and rhythm. The idea that geometry underlies existence is ancient. The Greeks saw it in the perfection of circles and triangles, the ratios that define harmony. Pythagoras believed that numbers were the essence of all things, that reality itself was music made visible. The same ratios that govern the strings of a lyre, he claimed, govern the distances of planets and the shapes of crystals. All is number, he said, and though we've since traded his mysticism for mathematics, the statement still feels true. Modern science, too, finds geometry everywhere it looks. The spirals of galaxies follow logarithmic patterns identical to those of seashells and hurricanes. The branching of trees mirrors the splitting of rivers, the veins of leaves, the filaments of dark matter in the cosmic web. Even in the chaos of turbulence, fractal forms emerge, structures that repeat infinitely, self-similar and recursive. Nature, it seems, loves to echo itself. At the heart of this order lies a ratio known since antiquity, the golden ratio, phi, approximately 1.618. It appears in the spiral of a sunflower, the curve of a nautilus shell, the proportions of the human body. Leonardo da Vinci found it in anatomy. Kepler found it in the orbits of planets. It's a number that seems to whisper of design, though no designer need exist. Even random processes, left to evolve, often settle into golden forms. It's as if the universe, left to its own devices, arranges itself in beauty. Mathematicians call this spontaneous symmetry, patterns emerging naturally from simple rules. Take a pendulum swinging in two directions at once, and you'll get a flower of intersecting curves. Spin a set of equations describing gravity and motion, and galaxies bloom. Even quantum fields, at their most abstract, obey geometrical symmetries, rotations, reflections, transformations that preserve form through change. The universe doesn't merely occupy space, it is space, folded according to hidden geometrical laws. Some physicists have gone further, suggesting that geometry itself is the fundamental substance of reality. In loop quantum gravity, space-time is woven from tiny loops, networks of area and volume that connect like the strands of a cosmic lattice. In string theory, the universe's deepest structure is described by Calabi-Yau shapes, multi-dimensional geometries so intricate that even visualizing them defies comprehension. In both views, geometry is not an abstract property of space, it's the very material of being. Matter, energy, and time are but shadows cast by form. This idea is not new. In Plato's dialogue Timaeus, the cosmos is described as a living creature shaped by perfect solids. The tetrahedron, cube, octahedron, icosahedron, and dodecahedron, each corresponding to an element. It was a symbolic model, but uncannily prescient. Today, we find the same geometric regularities in atomic orbitals, in molecular bonds, in the tessellations of crystal lattices. The building blocks of nature still follow the geometry of perfection. Even chaos, when seen deeply enough, becomes geometry. The Mandelbrot set, a famous fractal discovered in the 20th century, emerges from a simple equation repeated endlessly. Zoom in, and its boundary reveals infinite complexity, spirals, petals, tendrils, each echoing the whole. It's a visual metaphor for the universe itself, infinite variation contained within a single, elegant rule. Perhaps that's what geometry really is, the grammar of existence. Every pattern, from the rhythm of your heartbeat to the orbits of galaxies, is a sentence written in its language. Mathematics doesn't invent these patterns, it discovers them, revealing the syntax that binds reality together. Einstein once said that God does not play dice, but perhaps the truth is subtler. God plays with geometry. There's a growing belief among physicists that the universe might be nothing more than geometry at play. In certain theories, space-time itself can be derived from the entanglement patterns of quantum information, a web of relationships that, when mapped, takes on a geometric form. The shape of those relationships gives rise to the shape of the universe. In that sense, geometry isn't just beneath reality, it creates it. When ancient mystics spoke of sacred geometry, they may have sensed this intuitively. The flower of life, the Sri Yantra, the labyrinth of Chartres, all are human attempts to trace the outlines of the infinite. They are visual prayers, symbols of a truth that words cannot reach, that form and spirit are one, that creation itself has symmetry. Even consciousness, some philosophers suggest, may have a geometric substrate. Brainwaves form standing patterns, neural networks organize into fractal webs, thoughts ripple through dimensional layers of information. The structure of awareness might mirror the structure of the cosmos, nested, recursive, endlessly folding upon itself. Perhaps that is why geometry feels familiar to us. We are made of it. There's a strange serenity in this idea. Geometry is indifferent, yet compassionate in its precision. It does not choose, it simply is. From its equations emerge the arcs of rainbows and the curvature of black holes, the spiral of DNA and the orbit of moons. It is the bridge between matter and meaning, between physics and poetry. If geometry is the skeleton of the universe, then beauty is its breath. The two are inseparable. Every curve of light bending through gravity, every symmetry broken to create complexity, is an act of aesthetic balance. Perhaps that's why we find beauty so moving, because it is the echo of the universe recognizing itself through us. When we gaze at a spiral galaxy or trace the proportions of a cathedral, we're not inventing harmony, we're remembering it. And so, perhaps, the geometry of existence is not something to be solved, but something to be felt. The pattern is not just out there among the stars, it's within you, in the rhythm of your pulse, the architecture of your thoughts, the slow curve of your breath. The same ratios that sculpted galaxies shaped your bones and eyes. The same fractals that guide clouds and coral guide the growth of neurons that dream of them. To see geometry is to glimpse the mind of the cosmos, written everywhere and nowhere. It is to realize that the universe does not merely exist, it composes itself. Each point of light, each living form, is a note in its endless harmonious design. Life, when you think about it, is the universe's most improbable experiment. Out of the cold dust of dying stars, out of carbon and hydrogen and silent stone, something began to move, to replicate, to sense, to want. In the long history of the cosmos, where stars ignite and extinguish like candles in a storm, life is a whisper, fragile, fleeting, yet somehow aware of the darkness it rose from. How could mere matter learn to look back at itself and ask why it exists? What alchemy turned atoms into awareness? Science tells a story that begins, as always, with chance. Billions of years ago, on a young planet orbiting a stable star, chemistry began to flirt with complexity. Molecules formed chains folded into shapes that could copy themselves. Within the chaos of the primordial sea, order emerged, not imposed from outside, but self-organized, like frost growing on glass. Out of that order came evolution, and with evolution came a strange kind of persistence, the desire, however mechanical, to continue. But behind that mechanism, there's a deeper mystery. Every cell in your body obeys the same laws as any rock or flame, yet collectively, they give rise to something that transcends them. Thought, memory, emotion. The sum becomes greater than the parts, as if the universe, for the first time, began to dream. The astrophysicist Carl Sagan once wrote, "We are a way for the cosmos to know itself." That may sound poetic, but it's also literal. Consciousness is how the universe observes its own unfolding. We are its eyes and mind, temporarily assembled from its dust. Life, then, is not an accident. It's an inevitability of curiosity. Given enough time, matter organizes into complexity, and complexity gives rise to reflection. The laws that govern stars and particles also govern neurons and thought. The same mathematics that shapes galaxies shapes the electric patterns of the brain. And perhaps that's no coincidence. The structure of life may be the structure of the cosmos itself, repeated at a different scale, folded into biological form. At the heart of life's persistence lies a principle known as entropy reduction. Living systems defy the universal drift toward disorder, not by breaking the rules, but by exploiting them. They feed on gradients, differences in energy, temperature, and information. In doing so, they create temporary islands of order in a sea of chaos. A leaf, in the sunlight, is a machine for reversing entropy locally, using photons to arrange molecules into new patterns. Life doesn't fight the second law of thermodynamics, it dances with it. And when you look at it this way, life seems less like an exception and more like a continuation of the universe's deeper tendency to create structure, to explore possibility. From quarks forming atoms, to atoms forming molecules, to molecules forming cells, there is a single direction toward coherence, toward self-organization, toward awareness. Perhaps consciousness is not the summit of that progression, but merely one more step in a continuum stretching from the quantum to the cosmic. Some philosophers and scientists now speak of panpsychism, the idea that consciousness, in some primitive form, may be a fundamental aspect of reality, present even in particles and fields, not human-like awareness, but a kind of proto-experience, an intrinsic ability to respond, to relate. If so, then life does not create consciousness, it amplifies it, concentrates it into focus. This idea finds a strange resonance in the ancient texts of the East. In the Upanishads, the sages wrote that Atman, the individual soul, is identical to Brahman, the universal spirit. Awareness is not something that happens inside beings. Beings happen inside awareness. We are not observers of the universe. We are expressions of its self-observation. What we call life may be the way the cosmos learns to perceive itself from within. From the perspective of biology, life exists because it can encode information. DNA, the molecular script, writes itself with 4 letters, folding and unfolding an endless recombination. It is not life in itself, but the language through which life speaks. Every organism is a sentence, every ecosystem a paragraph. Together they form a story, a living autobiography of the universe, and the story is still being written, one mutation, one breath, one thought at a time. But even this intricate mechanism hides deeper questions. How does awareness emerge from matter? How can the firing of neurons produce the feeling of being, the sense of self, the quiet continuity that experiences the world? Neuroscience can map the circuits, measure the electrical signals, but the leap from brain activity to subjective experience remains unexplained. It is known as the hard problem of consciousness, and it haunts both science and philosophy alike. Maybe the problem lies in our assumption that matter produces mind. What if it's the other way around? What if mind is the fundamental field, and matter is the pattern it creates within itself? This isn't mysticism. It's a hypothesis shared by some of the greatest scientific and philosophical thinkers. Consciousness, in this view, is the substrate from which everything arises, the screen upon which the movie of reality plays. If so, then life is not something rare or accidental. It is inevitable wherever the conditions allow consciousness to localize and to anchor itself in form. Every living thing, from bacteria to whale to human, is a vessel of perception, a temporary whirlpool in the stream of awareness. The universe is not a dead expanse into which life intrudes. It is a living expanse, forever experimenting with ways to know itself. And if life is the universe thinking, then perhaps love, the impulse toward connection, unity, and care, is the universe remembering. Love is not a sentiment but a force, a gravitational pull between consciousnesses, mirroring the gravity that binds galaxies. It's the recognition, deep and wordless, that we are not separate from what we observe. The longing to know, to touch, to understand is the same longing that caused the void to tremble and become the cosmos. One could say that life is the moment the universe became self-aware, and that every living being is a continuation of that awakening. You're the cosmos reflecting upon itself with human eyes, wondering at the stars that are, in truth, your own forgotten atoms. When you breathe, you're recycling the air of supernovae. When you think, you're reassembling the logic of the stars. Perhaps in some quiet and eternal sense, life is not about survival at all. It is about remembrance, the remembrance of unity beneath the illusion of separation, the remembrance that awareness has no boundary, that existence itself is the pulse of a single consciousness dreaming in infinite forms. The universe does not think about itself, it thinks through you. And in that act of thinking, of feeling, of simply being, the cosmos continues its long, shimmering contemplation of itself. There are moments when consciousness feels less like something we possess and more like something we swim in, an ocean that thinks through us, not within us. Scientists once believed that the mind was purely mechanical, that thought arose from electrical sparks jumping between neurons like lightning in a storm. But the deeper we've looked, the stranger the picture has become. In the small, dim spaces inside the brain, reality itself begins to behave as if it were listening. At the frontier of neuroscience and quantum theory lies a hypothesis that blurs the border between physics and awareness, the idea that consciousness may have quantum origins. It suggests that the mind's mysterious unity, its seamless flow of experience, might be born not from classical computation, but from the same deep uncertainty that governs subatomic particles. Among those who explored this possibility was physicist Roger Penrose, who argued that the human brain cannot be explained as a simple biological machine. Thought, he proposed, involves quantum coherence, delicate patterns of superposition that link the physical to the fundamental fabric of the universe itself. Together with anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, Penrose developed what they called the OR theory, or orchestrated objective reduction. It imagines that within the brain's neurons, tiny structures called microtubules, cylindrical lattices of protein, may host quantum states. These microtubules, they suggested, could function as quantum computers, maintaining coherence across the brain before collapsing into conscious moments. Each collapse would be an event of reality itself choosing, crystallizing possibilities into perception. In this way, the mind is not merely reacting to the universe, it is part of the same quantum dance that creates it. The theory remains controversial, its evidence uncertain. Quantum coherence, many argue, would be destroyed almost instantly by the warm, noisy environment of the brain. Yet experiments in recent years have found hints of quantum effects in biology. Birds navigating by quantum entanglement in their eyes, plants capturing sunlight through coherent energy transfer, even enzymes using quantum tunneling to drive chemical reactions. If life can harness the strange laws of the quantum realm, perhaps the brain can too. What if consciousness is not confined to neural networks, but arises from the quantum fabric of space-time itself? What if awareness is not something the brain produces, but something it tunes into, like a radio receiving the cosmic signal of being? In this view, the brain is not the generator of consciousness, but its instrument, a resonant structure that translates the universal field of awareness into thought and feeling. The mind is a pattern of resonance in the symphony of reality. Ancient philosophy, as if anticipating this, has long described consciousness as the ground of all existence. In the Vedic texts, the self, Atman, is said to be identical with the universal consciousness, Brahman. In Taoism, the mind that moves all things is not separate from the world. It is the world thinking itself. Quantum physics, in its own hesitant language, seems to circle back to these old truths, that reality and awareness are not two, but one, woven together like the warp and weft of a single fabric. The peculiar phenomena of quantum mechanics make this unity difficult to ignore. A particle does not exist in one state until measured. It exists in many at once, as a superposition of probabilities. Observation collapses that superposition into actuality. But what is observation, if not a primitive form of consciousness? Even if we remove the human observer, something in the act of measurement, a relation, a recognition, determines the outcome. Perhaps consciousness and the collapse of the wave function are two sides of the same coin, awareness manifesting as the choice that turns potential into experience. Penrose suggested that these moments of quantum collapse might correspond to discrete flashes of consciousness, microseconds of awareness combining into the continuous flow we experience as mind. If true, then each thought, each sensation, each dream would be a quantum event, the universe knowing itself through you in countless, microscopic awakenings. The implications are staggering. If consciousness is woven into the quantum fabric, then it is not confined to brains or bodies. It may exist wherever the universe exists, in every atom, every photon, every trembling vibration of the void. The cosmos itself could be sentient in some subtle way, dreaming through patterns of matter and energy. What we call life might be consciousness exploring its own geometry. What we call death might simply be a change in the pattern, a redistribution of awareness into new forms. And yet, there's humility in this thought, for if consciousness is fundamental, then our human awareness is only a local modulation of something vast. The self becomes less a separate entity and more a ripple in a boundless ocean. Our thoughts are not isolated sparks, but flickers of the same eternal flame. In quiet moments, when the chatter of the mind falls away, one can almost sense that greater field, the silence beneath perception, the still awareness that does not think yet knows. This state, described in meditative traditions for millennia, may be the mind returning to its quantum ground, when the distinctions between subject and object dissolve, and awareness simply observes itself. Modern neuroscience finds that such states correspond to patterns of brain coherence, rhythmic synchronization across distant regions. Perhaps, for an instant, the mind becomes ordered enough to resonate with the underlying coherence of the cosmos. If this is so, then consciousness is not a byproduct of evolution. It is the direction of evolution. From the first atoms forming bonds, to the first cells sensing light, to minds contemplating their own existence, the universe has been moving toward greater awareness. The arc of creation bends not merely toward complexity, but toward reflection. Life is the means by which the cosmos achieves self-recognition, and maybe that's what it has always been searching for, to see itself clearly, even if only for a moment, through the eyes of a creature that knows it will die. The paradox of consciousness is that it is both local and infinite, bound to the body yet rooted in the eternal. When you look up at the stars, what you're really seeing is the universe looking back through the mirror of your own awareness. Perhaps that is the quiet secret of all existence, that consciousness is not something that arose from matter, but the other way around. The cosmos is not a stage upon which awareness appeared by accident. It is awareness itself, sculpted into form and motion. Matter is what consciousness looks like when it dreams. And in those dreams, in the soft light of thought and feeling, the universe whispers to itself across time, I am. When we look at the night sky, it's easy to think of ourselves as small, tiny creatures adrift in a cosmic ocean too vast to fathom. But perhaps that's the wrong metaphor. We're not adrift in the universe. We're of it. Every atom in your body was forged in the core of a star. Every breath you take shaped by processes that began billions of years ago. You're not separate from the cosmos. You're a continuation of its story, written in the language of matter and light. This connection is more than poetic. It is literal. The carbon that forms your cells, the calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, all were born in the furnaces of a long-dead stars. When massive suns reached the end of their lives, they exploded, scattering their enriched elements across space. Those elements drifted through the interstellar void, gathered again into clouds, and eventually into planets. On one such world, they combined in ways that could perceive, think, and love. The universe, through you, achieved the ability to feel its own heartbeat. This is the astonishing paradox of existence, that from the most impersonal forces of physics, gravity, nuclear fusion, electromagnetism, emerged intimacy. From chaos came pattern, from energy, awareness. It's as though the cosmos, after billions of years of silent expansion, wanted to see itself, and so it became eyes. It wanted to understand, and so it became mind. The stars are not above us, they are within us, burning quietly behind our thoughts. Modern cosmology calls this the principle of emergence, the idea that complexity gives rise to properties that cannot be predicted from their parts. Hydrogen and oxygen separately are gases, but combine them and you get liquid water, capable of harbouring life. Neurons, individually, are simple cells, but in vast networks, they generate consciousness. Likewise, the universe, composed of simple physical laws, evolves structures capable of reflection, memory, and meaning. It's as if the cosmos were a seed unfolding into awareness. From this perspective, humanity is not an accident of physics, but one of its natural consequences. The same mathematics that shapes galaxies shapes the pathways of your mind. The same energy that drives the fusion of stars powers the thoughts that dream of them. To contemplate the universe is to complete a loop, a feedback between the cosmos and itself, awareness folding back upon its origin. The physicist Brian Cox once said that, "We are the way for the universe to know itself." The phrase feels almost sacred. When you trace the lineage of your atoms, you find a continuous thread stretching back to the Big Bang. The hydrogen in your cells is as old as time itself. Formed in the first few minutes after creation, you are, in a very real sense, a descendant of the universe's first fire. Every thought you think ripples outward, adding new complexity to the pattern that began 13.8 billion years ago. But this knowledge also carries a quiet humility. For all our intelligence, we remain bound by cosmic law. We are temporary configurations of matter, like waves upon the ocean of existence. We rise, shimmer in sunlight, and fade back into the sea. And yet, while the wave exists, it reflects the sky. Consciousness, fleeting as it may be, reflects eternity. The more we understand the cosmos, the more it seems to mirror our inner world. The brain's neural networks resemble the large-scale structure of the universe, clusters connected by filaments, voids separating islands of matter, the same patterns repeating at vastly different scales. The ratio between the total energy of the universe and its critical density determines whether it expands forever or collapses back upon itself. In a curious symmetry, the balance between excitation and inhibition in the human brain determines whether we remain conscious or fall into chaos. It's as if both mind and cosmos are tuned to the same fragile harmony between too little structure and too much. The philosopher Teilhard de Chardin envisioned this connection long before it was fashionable to do so. He saw evolution not merely as biological change, but as a cosmic process of increasing complexity and consciousness. He imagined a future point, the omega point, where awareness and matter would converge, where the universe would awaken fully to itself. Whether one interprets this mystically or scientifically, the idea resonates. Creation is not finished. The universe is still becoming. We tend to think of the cosmos as something external, but what if it's the other way around? What if space and time unfold within consciousness? The stars we see may not exist outside of perception, but as manifestations of a deeper field, the same field that gives rise to thought. In this view, the boundary between inner and outer dissolves. The nebulae, the galaxies, the infinite dark, they are not beyond us. They are us, rendered into light. Such ideas might sound abstract, but they have consequences for how we live. If we truly are the universe made self-aware, then how we treat one another and our planet becomes a reflection of how the cosmos treats itself. Every act of cruelty, every kindness, every work of art is a cosmic gesture, a continuation of the creation that began long before humanity. We are participants, not spectators. Even death, seen through this lens, loses its finality. The matter that composes you will return to the stars. The atoms of your body will someday drift through space again, perhaps to form another world, another consciousness, nothing is wasted. Nothing is truly lost. The universe is a perfect recycler. It burns and rebuilds itself endlessly, and we are threads in that eternal weave. When you stand beneath the night sky, you are not looking outward. You are looking inward, into your own origin. The light from distant galaxies enters your eyes, becomes electrical signals, becomes thought. The universe perceives its ancient self, billions of years removed, through the brief and precious window of your awareness. Every observation you make completes a circle that began at the dawn of time. Perhaps this is why awe feels so familiar, so ancient. It is not the emotion of something small gazing upon something vast. It is recognition. The universe recognizing its own face, remembering that it has always been awake. In the end, maybe the great truth is not that we are insignificant in the cosmic scale, but that significance itself is the cosmos' invention through us. The universe made beings capable of meaning, capable of love, capable of asking questions about their own existence. And in that act, the infinite gained a voice. You're not a speck lost in the cosmic void. You're the void remembering its own brilliance. You're the space between stars, learning to say I am. There's an ancient question that lingers at the edge of all understanding, older than science, older than religion. Why is there something rather than nothing? Every theory, every model, every observation leads us back to that impossible mystery. The Big Bang explains how the universe expanded, but not why it began. Quantum mechanics describes fluctuations in the vacuum, but not why there is a vacuum to fluctuate in. Even the boldest equations can't escape the haunting silence behind their symbols. Before there was time, before there was space, before there was even the potential for a universe, what was there? Some physicists argue that nothing is unstable, that the laws of quantum mechanics allow spontaneous creation, where pairs of particles flicker into existence from the vacuum, borrow energy from nowhere, and then vanish. In this view, the universe itself might be the ultimate quantum fluctuation, a cosmic bubble that never popped. But even this explanation avoids the real question. If the universe came from nothing, where did the laws that allow such creation come from? What gave the void the ability to tremble? Others suggest that nothing is an illusion, that emptiness is simply another form of fullness, a potential state containing all possibilities. In mathematics, zero is not absence but balance, the point where opposites meet. The vacuum, according to quantum field theory, is a sea of potential energy. Virtual particles emerge and disappear continuously. Space itself hums with restless possibility. What we call nothing may be the most active state of all, a primordial field brimming with latent creation. In the 1970s, physicist Edward Tryon proposed that the universe might be a self-contained fluctuation of zero total energy. The positive energy of matter and the negative energy of gravity could perfectly cancel out, allowing the cosmos to arise spontaneously without violating conservation laws. The universe, he wrote, is simply one of those things that happens from time to time. It was a bold joke disguised as a hypothesis, but the mathematics works. If true, it means that everything you see, every star, every thought, every moment, emerged from a perfectly balanced nothing, a symmetry so complete it required breaking to exist. Yet balance alone cannot explain awareness. Even if the universe could arise from nothing physically, why should that nothing give rise to consciousness, to experience, to meaning? Here, physics stumbles, and philosophy takes its quiet step forward. The mystics of many traditions have long spoken of the void, but not as negation. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu writes, "All things are born of being. Being is born of non-being." In this paradox lies a profound intuition, that the void is not a lack, but a source, not emptiness, but potential beyond form. Modern cosmology, without intending to, circles the same mystery. The equations describing inflation, the rapid expansion after the Big Bang, suggest that space itself carries energy. This energy, when dense enough, can stretch, create, and generate matter. But where did that energy originate? We can push the question back infinitely, yet at some point we face a boundary not of space, but of understanding. Maybe the question why itself breaks down at that edge. Maybe the universe simply is, and the act of existing is its own answer. Still, the human mind resists that. We are built to seek origins, to trace causes backward until we reach the source. And when no source can be found, we begin to sense something else, something that science and spirituality both touch but cannot fully describe. Or is not ignorance, it's the recognition that knowledge has boundaries. Beyond those boundaries lies not darkness, but mystery. Some philosophers propose that existence is a fundamental category, not requiring explanation. There cannot be nothing, because even nothingness would still be existence. Then is not contingent, it is the ground of all possibility. This aligns with an ancient concept in metaphysics, the idea that being is self-existent, eternal and undivided. The universe may not have begun, it may have always been, unfolding through infinite cycles of creation and dissolution, like tides rising and falling upon an eternal sea. The cyclic cosmologies of Hinduism, Buddhism, and even certain scientific models echo this idea. In the Vedic texts, each universe is said to last for billions of years, expanding and contracting in endless succession. When one cosmos dissolves, another arises from its ashes. There was no first beginning, because beginnings and endings are themselves illusions of time. The universe breathes eternally. Perhaps the most radical interpretation of all is that the distinction between something and nothing is artificial. In quantum physics, opposites often coexist. Particles and waves, energy and emptiness, matter and antimatter. Maybe existence and non-existence are not contradictions, but two sides of the same reality, like positive and negative poles of a single field. The void gives rise to form, and form returns to void. What we call creation is simply the oscillation between the two. There's a subtle beauty in this view. The universe didn't appear out of nowhere in a moment of explosion. It unfolded from the stillness of potential, like sound from silence. Every particle that exists is a frozen vibration of that primordial emptiness, each carrying within it the memory of the void it came from. You, too, are a manifestation of that same symmetry breaking, a localized expression of nothing becoming something for a brief and shining while. And when you contemplate that, the distinction between existence and awareness begins to blur. Perhaps consciousness is not a latecomer in this story, but its foundation. Maybe nothing was never empty. It was consciousness itself, infinite and unexpressed, dreaming the universe into being. In that dream, time was born, and space unfolded, and energy took form. Awareness became matter, and matter began to look back at awareness, asking, where did I come from? This would mean that the question itself, the yearning to know why there is something, is part of the answer. The universe's curiosity about its own origin is how it continues to create. Every act of wonder is the void rediscovering itself in form. Every question you ask is a fragment of that first silence, trying to remember its own sound. Perhaps, in the deepest sense, there was never a beginning and there will never be an end. Only the continuous awakening of existence out of itself. The void is not gone. It is here, right now, beneath every heartbeat, behind every breath, in the pause between thoughts. You came from nothing, yes, but not from absence. You came from the most fertile emptiness imaginable, the same stillness that hums quietly behind the stars. And one day, when all lights fade and all forms dissolve, you will return to that silence, not as something lost, but as something remembered. Some nights, when the wind is still and the stars seem sharper than usual, it's possible to imagine that time itself has stopped. The sky above you isn't a scene of motion, but a frozen tapestry, light from the past suspended in silence. The photons entering your eyes left their sources long before you existed, yet they arrive now, perfectly on cue. It's as if the universe has been waiting all this time for you to look up, and in that gaze, past and present collapse into one. We like to think of time as a flowing river, carrying moments downstream from future to past. But physics suggests something far stranger. Time may not flow at all. According to Einstein's general relativity, time and space are part of a single continuum, space-time. In that continuum, all events, past, present, and future, already exist. The universe is not a movie being projected frame by frame, but a finished film with every scene already written. We experience it sequentially, one frame at a time, because consciousness moves through it like a beam of light scanning an image. This is called the block universe or eternalism. In such a universe, now is not an objective slice of reality, but a perspective. What you call the present is simply the point your consciousness currently occupies in the four-dimensional fabric. Yesterday, tomorrow, and the moment you're living right now are all equally real. The future is not waiting to happen. It already is. If this is true, then the passage of time is an illusion, a feature of perception rather than physics. The equations of relativity work the same forward or backward. Time does not move, we do. The ticking of clocks, the beating of hearts, the slow erosion of mountains, these are not signs of time's flow, but the way matter and energy change relative to one another within space-time's fixed geometry. But if everything is already written, where does choice fit in? Are we trapped in a cosmic script, actors unaware that the play has already been performed? The block universe seems to suggest fatalism, yet that interpretation misses something subtle. Within the geometry of space-time, the laws of physics determine the relationships between events, but not the meaning of those events. Meaning is what consciousness weaves as it moves through the pattern. The universe may be static, but awareness is not. We are the travellers that give direction to the map. Quantum mechanics complicates the picture further. At the smallest scales, events are not fixed until observed. Possibilities coexist, each with its own probability, until measurement collapses them into actuality. This seems to contradict the block universe, where everything is already decided. But perhaps both views are true from different perspectives. From within time, reality seems probabilistic. From beyond time, all probabilities coexist in a higher order structure. The universe might not be a block, but a branching tree, an infinite tapestry of every possible timeline, all existing simultaneously in the grand geometry of being. If so, then the future is not singular. It is a landscape of potentials, and consciousness moves through it like a wanderer choosing a path. The act of observation becomes an act of navigation. You do not create reality from nothing, but you select, moment by moment, which branch of the cosmic tree you will experience. Every decision, every perception is a quantum event. The observer is not outside the universe, but the mechanism by which the universe differentiates itself. And here, once again, ancient philosophy seems to whisper in agreement. The Hindu notion of Lila, the cosmic play, describes existence as an eternal performance of the divine, unfolding infinitely through cycles of time. In this play, everything that can happen already has, yet it continues to be experienced anew, as though for the first time. The Taoists, too, spoke of reality as a flow without origin or destination. Time not as a line, but as a circle, forever turning. In modern cosmology, this echoes in theories of the multiverse and eternal inflation. Our universe may be just one bubble among countless others, each with its own timeline, its own version of events. Perhaps consciousness travels not through a single stream of time, but across many, glimpsing one world, then another, each as real as the last. Memory might be the residue of such crossings, a faint echo of other paths our awareness has taken. The deeper question, though, is not about time's structure, but about its purpose. Why should a timeless reality manifest as a sequence at all? Why does consciousness experience before and after? Maybe it's because experience itself requires contrast. Without change, there can be no awareness. Eternity without motion would be indistinguishable from nothingness. To know itself, the infinite must fragment into moments. Time is the way the eternal becomes intelligible to itself. Every moment, then, is not a fleeting instant lost to the past, but a window into the whole. When you remember a childhood scene, the smell of rain, the sound of laughter, you're not retrieving something gone. You're aligning your awareness with a region of space-time that still exists. The past is not dead, it is simply elsewhere. The future, too, is already real, waiting for your consciousness to arrive. This view transforms death, too. If time does not flow, then death is not an end, only a boundary, one of many coordinates in the fabric of eternity. The moment you die exists as permanently as the moment you're born. Every heartbeat, every breath, every thought is fixed forever in space-time's crystalline structure. In a sense, you are immortal, not as a ghost or spirit, but as an event eternally preserved in the architecture of the cosmos. Perhaps this is what mystics glimpse when they speak of enlightenment, a momentary detachment from the illusion of time, a recognition that everything is already complete. In deep meditation, the sense of duration dissolves, the past and future fall away, and what remains is an overwhelming stillness, a taste of the eternal. In that stillness, one realizes that there is nowhere to go and nothing to become. The journey has already been made. You're simply remembering it. Physicist Hermann Minkowski, who first formalized space-time, once said, "Henceforth space by itself and time by itself are doomed to fade away, and only a kind of union of the two will preserve an independent reality." But perhaps even that is not the end of the story. Beyond space-time, there may exist a deeper layer, one where geometry gives way to awareness, where consciousness is not inside the universe but the ground upon which the universe appears. If eternity is real, then the act of living becomes something sacred. Every choice, every glance, every word is a coordinate in the infinite map of being. Nothing is wasted, nothing disappears. Somewhere, you're always reading these words, always breathing, always looking at the night sky. Somewhere, time has never begun and never will, and in that realization lies both comfort and mystery. The understanding that time does not carry us away from eternity, but is the very means by which eternity discovers itself. If everything that has ever existed still exists somewhere within the frozen architecture of space-time, then perhaps the question is no longer what is the universe, but who is it? For the more we explore, the more we discover that reality behaves not like a machine, but like a mind. The laws of physics, once thought to be indifferent, seem to conspire toward coherence, toward complexity, toward awareness. The cosmos is not random, it is relational, and maybe that is because, at the deepest level, it is conscious. The idea that the universe itself possesses a form of awareness once belonged to the realm of mystics and poets. Yet as science probes deeper into the fabric of existence, this notion re-emerges, not as superstition but as hypothesis. In quantum physics, consciousness and measurement appear inseparable. In cosmology, information, not matter, is emerging as the true currency of the universe. And in mathematics, patterns of self-reference hint that awareness may be an inevitable property of systems complex enough to perceive themselves. The cosmos, it seems, is not a stage upon which awareness performs. It is awareness performing itself. This vision aligns with a concept called cosmopsychism, the idea that consciousness is not produced by the brain, nor confined to individual minds, but is a universal field of which we are localized expressions. Just as waves belong to the ocean, our thoughts and sensations belong to a larger consciousness that spans the entire cosmos. When we look outward at the galaxies, we're not looking at something alien. We are looking at the extended body of awareness itself. Information theory adds another layer to this picture. In the 20th century, physicist John Archibald Wheeler proposed a radical idea he called it from bit, that all physical reality ultimately arises from information, from yes or no decisions, from the binary fabric of existence itself. Every particle, every field, every event is a record of information exchange. If Wheeler was right, then the universe is not made of matter, but meaning, existence. At its core is a conversation, and conversations require a listener. Information, no matter how elegant, is meaningless without interpretation. So who or what interprets the cosmic code? Some would say consciousness is that interpreter, the universe reading its own script, but others, like physicist David Bohm, went further. He proposed that beneath the observable universe lies an implicate order, a hidden layer of wholeness from which the visible world unfolds. Reality, in this sense, is not fragmented but enfolded, like a hologram where every part contains the whole. Consciousness and matter are two aspects of the same underlying unity, eternally mirroring each other. The more one contemplates this, the harder it becomes to draw a line between observer and observed. The act of seeing may not be separate from what is seen. The cosmos is both painter and painting, dreamer and dream. Awareness folds into form, and form unfolds into awareness. And through this continuous process, something ineffable is happening. The infinite is learning about itself. Even the simplest forms of order seem to embody a kind of perception. A crystal senses the arrangement of its molecules. A cell knows how to repair itself. A galaxy remembers the dance of gravity that keeps its stars in motion. These are not metaphors, but expressions of responsiveness, of the universe interacting with itself through nested levels of awareness. Life and consciousness, then, are not anomalies. They are intensifications of a pattern that has always been present. In this light, the birth of sentient beings on a small blue planet was not an accident, but a milestone in the universe's evolution of self-reflection. Through us, it gained eyes that can look inward as well as outward. Through our questions, it wonders about its own purpose. Through our art, it dreams new possibilities for itself. The universe does not simply expand, it awakens. Perhaps this awakening happens everywhere. There may be civilizations scattered across the galaxies, each one a different expression of the same cosmic mind, each dreaming its own version of reality. We may never meet them, not because they are distant, but because they exist in parallel branches of possibility. Yet even if we never see them, we are connected, threads of consciousness woven through the same luminous fabric. In mystical traditions, this interconnectedness is often described as unity, the realization that separation is illusion. The Buddhist concept of interbeing, the Sufi notion of the One, the Christian idea of the divine Logos, all point toward the same insight, that everything participates in one infinite consciousness. Science, through the language of physics, is slowly rediscovering what ancient wisdom never forgot. The equations of relativity and quantum mechanics may be the modern sutras of the same eternal truth, that the universe is not made of things, but of relationships. What does it mean, then, to be human in such a universe? Perhaps our purpose is not to dominate nature, nor to escape it, but to remember that we are it, to live as conscious expressions of its mystery. Every act of kindness, every work of creation, Every breath of wonder is the universe contemplating itself through us. When you close your eyes and feel the pulse within your chest, that rhythm is not yours alone. It is the pulse of stars, the echo of the Big Bang, the heartbeat of the cosmos. Death, too, changes meaning here. If consciousness is fundamental, then it cannot be destroyed, only transformed. When your body returns to dust, the awareness that animated it does not vanish. It dissolves back into the universal field, like a wave returning to the ocean. Your life is not a singular event, but a pattern, a temporary eddy in the current of eternity. Nothing that truly exists can ever be lost. It merely changes form. And maybe that's the final secret, that the universe began not from chaos, but from stillness, from a silence so vast it contained every sound, every possibility, every dream. The Big Bang was not an explosion but an awakening, the first stir of awareness within the void. That awakening continues now, in every act of perception, in every photon of light, in every heartbeat that remembers its source. When you gaze at the night sky, remember, the universe is not out there. It is here, experiencing itself through your eyes. The stars are not distant. They are within the same field of awareness that wonders about them. The space between galaxies is the same emptiness that exists within your breath, the same silence that holds your thoughts. And perhaps that silence is the answer to everything. The origin, the meaning, the destination. The silence before creation was not absence. It was presence beyond comprehension. It was the cosmos waiting to speak itself into being. And it still speaks, softly, through every atom, every spark of life, every human soul that dares to ask the oldest question of all. Who is dreaming this universe, and what will it dream next?